He just said he's been in the waiting room since 5:31. I don't see him, so he must be on his phone. So I'm just gonna let everybody in, okay?
Yeah.
Said he's been in the waiting room since 5. All right.
Going to call the meeting to order, I suppose, and with a flag salute to begin with. Everybody stand. Pledge allegiance to
Flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Chairwoman, can you hear me, Susan?
Yes.
Sorry, I think the reason I didn't get let in right away is because I am logged in on my business partner's account, and so Carrie probably didn't recognize it. So I'm just going to quickly log out, log back in with my proper credentials, and then rejoin the call in a minute.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
Carrie, I never saw any minutes. So are they still being worked on?
They are. I just sent all the edits to the stenographer's office today.
Okay, so we'll look at the February 15th minutes next month.
So we're gonna need a motion to table them.
Motion, do I hear a motion to table?
Second, I make a motion to table.
A second, Scott.
Right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, Carrie, do you want to read the cases that are going to be adjourned tonight? Just so if someone's in the audience and wants to depart, although one of them, we're going to take testimony. And that would be a Jesse Halsey Lane after we open it.
Yeah. So 8 Dartmouth, 63 Main Street, 34 High Street, and 55 Howard Street will not be viewed tonight.
All right,
You have Dartmouth. Is that adjourned?
Yes.
okay, so we're going to start tonight with motions to adjourn. First, 8 Dartmouth Road.
So moved.
So moved, Scott.
Second.
Alex, second.
Alex seconded, correct?
Yep.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Number 2 on the agenda, 63 Main Street. This was adjourned previously until they finished their secret review. So do I have a motion to adjourn it until that review is completed?
So
So moved.
Joe.
So
Second.
Susan,
Yes.
I sent the updated agenda yesterday afternoon with the decision of 43 Oakland. So that would.
Oh.
was first.
Terribly sorry, I missed that. Can we go ahead and act on the 63 Main Street and then we'll have the decision
Yes, that's fine.
considered? And who made the motion to adjourn?
Joe.
Joe.
Alex
Okay.
seconded.
Great. And the motion is to adjourn it until the secret review is completed. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. 43 Oakland. That we have a decision to consider. I did not attend. I was not on the board in December, so I can't really participate in that, but would you like to review it with us, Liz?
Sure, yes. 43 Oakland Avenue. The subject property is 7,395 square feet. This was an application to construct, to renovate the existing 2-story residence and construct a dormer addition to the second floor. The relief herein granted is for variances from Sag Harbor Village Code, section 300-9.3D for pyramid relief in the amount of 825 cubic feet where 0 cubic feet is permitted, and variances from Village Code Section 300-4.3 dimensional regulations for the side yard setback to be 4.9 feet where 10 feet is required. Therefore, a variance in the amount of 5.1 feet is necessary. The applicant in this case did reduce the variance request amounts. Originally was seeking over 900 cubic feet of relief and reduced it to 825. And for the reasons set forth in the written determination, this board hereby grants the variances requested therein.
Any comments from the board on the decision? Do I have a motion to approve?
Yes, so moved,
Approved.
Alex.
And seconded by Ham. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And please let the record reflect that I did not vote. All
I
right.
have
moving-
that.
Okay, moving on to 152 Hampton Street. Do I have a motion to open it? Or do I need to open it? Sorry.
It's open.
Okay. Is the applicant present?
Dennis Downs, I'm here, and I believe Mr. Loft was also on the line.
Yes, I'm here.
Great. Do you have a presentation, Dennis, that you would like to make before we
Well,
consider?
The presentation, I'm sorry about last month. My equipment just failed completely. It turned out the gardener cut into my internet line, and I just couldn't get any signals. But I listened to all the arguments last month, and Steve did a very good presentation on our side. I don't believe we need another presentation. I think there was a misconception by the public as to what we were proposing. And to that extent, I would say that this is a commercial building. It has been before zoning. And then in 1986, it was granted permission variances to allow offices. And then that was for the current permit that we have is to allow offices on both floors. But Mr. Loeffler has gotten some requests from some retail people, and we put that on our list that we sent to the planning board. The planning board came back and said, we will approve businesses, retail businesses that are comparable to an office. So if it's a benign type office, say a lawyer's office or a doctor's office, something of that nature, that would generate X number of cars per hour. If it was that type of retail business, the planning board said that that would be okay. You have to paraphrase what they said. But if you look at the secret determination of non-significance, basically that's what they're saying. It has to be a benign type. So one of Mr. Loeffler's current tenants on Bay Street is the bicycle shop. And they've asked Steve if he would give them space so that they could move their bicycle shop over there. Now, that's a fairly benign type use. It's not, you know, on the weekend, you get several people show up because they're buying equipment or they're having their bikes fixed or something of that nature. But for the most part, it's quiet all week. My office is right above those fellows right now, and I could tell you it's quiet. I don't hear a peep out of that business. So it's that type of business that we're looking for, and it's not every ground floor space. I mean, if we had 2 or 3 retail stores, that would be more than enough. We don't know if we're going to have any retail stores, but we expect that there will be the bicycle shop will move over there.
That's not, just so I
Okay.
can clarify, that's not part of your current application, right, Dennis? Because that would need to, that's
Correct.
not one of the uses permitted by the negative declaration.
No, we would have to go back.
Yeah,
Right.
okay.
Yeah, we're satisfied with the absent the bicycle people coming over. We're satisfied with the uses that the planning board said would be permissible.
Can I ask you a question, Dennis? If you did not expand the non-conforming uses with the addition, would you need the parking variance?
I can, I'm sorry, could you say that?
If you did not expand the non-conforming commercial uses on this R20 parcel, would you need the parking variance?
Okay, we would, no, the answer is no. Yes, no, we wouldn't. We would need the 690 square feet of the addition that we're putting on, of the 2,800, less than 2,800 square foot addition. 690 square feet of that is open space where, you come in floor to ceiling like an atrium, no offices, no retail space. That's why I say if you were to back that out, 690 square feet, we wouldn't need the 3 spaces. But that space, that 690 square feet is not being used for any mercantile or office purposes. So if we were just to add if you look at the survey, I'm sorry, I didn't have it here. If you look at the survey, the site plan, there's a little area that's about 15 by 23. Do you see that? That's part of the extension in the back, the addition.
The entranceway.
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, that is the space that I'm speaking of. That's 345 square feet on the ground floor, and it's 345 square feet on the second floor. It's all open, floor to ceiling, stairways, elevator, the whole thing. None of that space there is going to be used for businesses. If we were to eliminate that and just put that big part of the addition back onto the building, no, we wouldn't need a parking variance.
Does
But
anyone have any questions other than myself?
Well, my only question is, forgive me if you've answered this question in past meetings, but I just am wondering to what extent you've done a study to kind of understand and I know we've talked about this before, but if you could just kind of remind us of what study you've done to evaluate the traffic impacts of having this many spaces there. Obviously, I know the number of spaces required based on your use of the property, but it does seem like an awful lot of spaces and therefore potential traffic coming in and out of the.
Steve, Alex, I'm sorry, Dennis here. The planning board through Kathy Eisman and Nelson Pope and Voorhees did that study. And that's how they based the CEQA determination recently, because they wanted businesses, if it wasn't going to be an office, they wanted a business that had the same traffic pattern or requirements that an office would have. And that's why that list is so small.
I guess what Alex is asking though is, if you did not add on to the building, how many parking places do you need?
None.
Well,
Additional.
No, what
No
we
addition.
show is what we comply with the parking code.
for not
If you
adding on to the
eliminate that
building.
atrium area.
Well, no, but I mean, let's say you eliminate the atrium and you eliminate the addition proposed, just with what is already approved. You've already got a building permit to
And
build.
we have more parking than we require.
Right, so how many spaces are you actually required within just the existing condition?
The existing condition for offices or for retail, we need 9 spaces because it's
Okay.
all, right.
Yes,
Right,
but
and so you're showing,
That's according to Nelson, Pope, and Voorhees. They're the,
yes, but you're asking us to expand a non-conforming use to add retail. So your parking is it going to change?
No,
well, the 200 square feet per, one space for every 200 square feet is consistent. It's the same for offices or for retail. And that's what the additional square footage and the parking spaces were based upon.
Does that answer your
Susan?
question, Scott?
well, so
Now-
you're showing, I'm sorry, it's hard to read here, but you're showing 19 spaces,
where
correct?
22 are required.
Right.
Yes.
But if you don't add on to the building and you just go with what you've got, what I'm trying to get at is how many spaces are required for that? You're saying just 9?
9.
Okay, so we're doubling the parking component.
So one way I'm thinking about this, and I'm just kind of throwing out initial thoughts, this is not necessarily a reflection of where I'm going to end up on this, but on the one hand, this is zoned to be a commercial space.
It's a
and so-
non-conforming use on an R20 zoning classification.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the clarification. But at the very least, given the increased traffic that this is going to bring about, especially by expanding the existing space, I'm uncomfortable then on top of that granting a variance for the parking requirement. It seems to me that if we're going to try and compromise between some commercial use, some increased activity at that location, which obviously a good number of neighbors are not happy about, we should kind of put a limit on how much excess or additional traffic that could create. And therefore, I'm just wondering, as a kind of first thought, that I would not be comfortable providing a variance on the parking spots, and therefore that might require you.
Can I remind the board before we go too much further that our standards for an approval of a change of use, which is one of the things we're being asked to do, to change it from office to retail, has a different set of standards.
I can
And
read them if you'd like.
yes, would you review them, Liz?
Sure.
Because I think it's
Sure.
important
you.
to
So to
understand that.
change from one, so this is a non-conforming property, pre-existing non-conforming. To change from one non-conforming use to another, you have to abide by Village Code Section 300-12.6. And the standards are the Board of Appeals shall have made a determination that such change will be beneficial to the general neighborhood. Any such determination shall require the board to affirmatively find, 1, that the change of use will not be the introduction of an undesirable use in the neighborhood. 2, that the owner is without any reasonable alternative. 3, the owner's hardship is unique. 4, the change of use will not cause or result in a detriment of any kind to nearby properties. 5, the owner's difficulty is not self-created. 6, the grant of any change of use will not adversely change the character of the area. And 7, the new use will not be an intensification of use. B, such change is made subject to reasonable conditions and safeguards as the Board of Appeals may stipulate. C, in no event shall the Board of Appeals approve any application to change a non-conforming use to a cabaret, disco, nightclub, or superstore. And finally, D, any application under this section shall require that the notice of hearing be provided by the applicant as required under 312.3D1, except said notice shall be given to all owners within a 500-foot radius.
My concern, and we need to see if there are any comments from the audience, but my concern is that we have to make an affirmative finding that the owner is not with any reasonable alternative, that the hardship is unique, that the change of use will not cause or result in detriment of any kind to nearby properties, that the owner's difficulty is not self-created, and the grant of the change will not adversely change the existing character of the area. And they use the word area, not the person across the street, but area. And I'm not in a position to make that type of affirmative finding on this case.
I also think
I feel the same way. I didn't realize.
and what Alex was getting at, I mean, in terms of the parking, it would seem to me that new use would be an intensification of use, since we're having to grant a variance for parking places.
But may I just say something? The grant for the parking variance is only for the space that I just described a few moments ago. Okay, it's for space in the building that's not going to be used for any type of office or retail store. If I were to remove that, we would just have a less attractive building. That's really the only thing. But it would not impact the amount of mercantile space within the building.
Mr. Leffler, you have been very patient and, come back to us many times. We've heard testimony from people in the area. And, I'll say this again, I'm not in the position to make an affirmative finding on this. It's a different set of considerations. And I think
I would like to say something.
Please do.
This area is basically a residential area with homes. The fact that we have a gasoline station very close proximity to it, with also a retail store, I feel that is putting an undue traffic pattern to the area, to a commercial area. I think also that the neighbors in the community have also objected vehemently against having this commercialization of the building. And so I would not be affirmative for the changes.
Okay, may I just say something? I think that there's a problem with the perception of this. Right now, we have a permit to build the parking area, to renovate the building, to do the landscaping, to do the walkways, and make the whole building offices. I think that Dennis made a very good example in his letter. I don't know if you received his letter, when he says, if this building had been renovated with the permit that I could start tomorrow, and it was renovated and operating, and an application came before you to ask you to put a hair salon, for example, on the ground floor, I seriously doubt that there would be very much opposition, because this building would have been operating, had been renovated, the parking lot would be there, the parking spaces would be there, and it would become part of the community.
No,
No?
no.
I think we need to see if there's anyone from the audience that would like to speak on this. We haven't done that yet, if you don't mind.
You have to be called on, please, before you speak.
Well, I was just gonna
So
say that
I'll call on people.
No,
I know
Scott
that
has
we-
one thing he wants to say first.
I was just gonna say that I know that it was not an easy determination to allow what you have to exist, meaning we didn't easily grant the variances to turn that all into office and to allow, the expanded parking and the site plan that is required even to do what you have. So I just remember that was a big push for us, and we had determined that it was a benefit to the community to have that extra office space. I don't know if going beyond that is, beneficial.
But Mr. Baker, the office use has been approved since 1986.
We understand
No.
that, and we're not confusing it. It is a commercial building. We understand that it's non-conforming in an R20. You're asking to increase the non-conformity or change to add more non-conformity with the retail uses. And according to the code, we have to make an affirmative finding. And if none of the board members have any other comments, I think we should hear from
I
the
just
audience.
had one more,
Okay.
we had to make a determination to eliminate the warehouse and to allow it to be all office. Yes, there was some office space, but it was warehouse / office. And we allowed it to become all office. So there was a change.
Yeah, may I say something? It's Dennis Downs. Is the objection that there could be some retail in there, as opposed to, what if the addition was just strictly a office space? Is there?
Well, that's a
is
whole-
there objection to that?
Well, that's a whole other question.
That's not before us today.
No, well, what's before you is the expansion of it. So the
No,
question is,
what's
what's the
also-
use going to be?
What's also before us is a change of use. It's one of your
No, I
requests.
understand that, but let's assume the change of use was not part of the application, and it was just additional office space with this atrium in the middle. Would there be as great a great opposition as there is right this moment?
Meaning we can deny the change of use, but approve the addition for office space.
Correct.
Right.
Well, we would withdraw withdraw the change of use.
Right.
Yeah,
The
and-
only
and
thing
top-
about it is that it is becoming a very big building. You know, it's like over 8,000 square feet total, which is, if you think about a residential neighborhood, that's a massive house. I don't know if there even is a house in Sag Harbor that's that big.
Oh, there are.
There are, I'm sure.
Well, it's approximately 7,700 if you take out the atrium, and then if you take out the atrium, you don't need the parking variance. You just don't have as nice a building.
Well, so what you're suggesting is that if you eliminate variance request number 1 and the proposed addition, what you're left with is a parking variance?
A parking variance and pyramid.
Oh, wait.
No,
Steve, I
they're
don't think we need the
proposing-
Parking variance if there's no addition.
No,
No.
we do, yes.
Well, that's where we started this afternoon. That's a question I first asked.
Right, you
All that would
said
be
you
left
needed
is the
9.
parking space and the 981.6 cubic feet of relief for a pyramid.
So I have another question.
Steve,
This
I'm sorry,
quote
go ahead.
atrium space that will not be occupied, how is that enforceable?
Well, I mean, I could show you the plans, once it's done. I don't know. I mean, that's the concept that I have, is that it's going to be floor to ceiling. It's going to have a huge, a very large staircase going up with elevators, an elevator room behind it, staircases, emergency staircases in the back. It doesn't lend it's the main entrance for the upstairs.
I'd like for you to explain to me, what do you mean by nicer?
Well, because it would be, the whole front of it would be glass from floor to ceiling. And, when you walked in, the elevator would have a very large lighting fixture, the stairway would have a very large lighting fixture above it, which would be visible from the outside. When you got off of the elevator, you would be on the second floor, you would be looking out of all glass onto the parking lot. It would be very light, very airy. You'd move from one side to the other.
I have a question for Liz. Liz, if this property were zoned, the code speaks to the GFA for both residential and OD. It doesn't speak to non-conforming uses. If this property were zoned OD and an office was allowed, what would the GFA be as opposed to what we have?
I'm gonna have to calculate that. I don't know off the top of my head.
One
If it
question
were
I had
OD,
when reviewing the code was, it seems that the GFA was only in this OD or in residential, was only pertains to residences,
yeah.
not non-conforming.
But
uses.
Scott, if it were zoned OD and it wasn't non-conforming, wouldn't the amount of GFA that we have now exceed what would be permitted under the code, or not?
Yeah, if the permitted GFA for this, if it were a residence, would be something like 37 or 3,800 approximately.
But that doesn't apply because it's.
No, but it
doesn't
doesn't,
apply.
it's
We
true,
have-
it does not apply because this is not a residence.
No.
Right. Yeah.
Could we hear from the audience at this point, please?
Sure.
Carrie?
Reiner was first.
Okay, thank you. My name is Stephen Reiner. I'm a member of the board of Safe Sag Harbor. And as we've already been on record, we feel rather strongly that this intensification of use and the change in the variance, the non-conforming variance, is not appropriate for the area. I just wanted to make one other note before introducing Eileen Rosenberg, who's going to speak on behalf of a coalition of concerned neighbors and residents, and that is to revisit very briefly the issue of retail, the permission of retail spaces that would be similar to office spaces. And I know that one of the hypothetical retail spaces that would be allowed was going to be a hardware store, as an example. Well, as we all know, Sag Harbor has 2 hardware stores already and probably doesn't need a 3rd one. But be that as it may, I think it's a bit disingenuous to think that any commercial establishment, any retail establishment, regardless of the nature of the establishment, could even survive drawing as much traffic as a dentist's or a lawyer's office. I mean, one does not have one customer every half hour or one customer every 45 minutes for an 8 to 10 hour period and have a viable business. So I think revisiting the notion of just what businesses would be able to survive there would be something appropriate. But now I know Eileen Rosenberg has something to add, if I may. Eileen?
Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Are you under oath? I'm terribly sorry.
I have been under oath, yes.
And was the prior gentleman under oath?
I don't believe so,
I was
no.
not under oath.
Well, it's after the fact, but do you mind putting your right hand up and swearing? I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, so help you God.
I do.
Apologize. Thank you.
Thank you. And I am speaking on behalf of Save Sag Harbor and a coalition of concerned neighbors and residents. And we'd like to make the following statement. We understand that the ZBA is focused on the following criteria in evaluating requested variances. 1, will the approval of a variance have an adverse effect on the neighborhood? I think the answer is yes, with increased traffic, pollution, noise, etc. 2, will the approval of a variance result in an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood? Again, we have to respond yes. This would allow retail development in a residential and, in some cases, historic neighborhood. Further, changing from one non-conforming use to another, from warehouse office to office retail, will have an undesirable and unacceptable impact on several neighborhoods in the community, as voiced by numerous residents previously. 3, can the benefits of a variance be achieved by other means? Again, we must respond yes. The owner is focused on maximizing profit with retail, much to the detriment of the neighborhood. But when he purchased the property, he proposed only office space, so he must have assumed it would be profitable without retail. 4, is the requested variance substantial? Yes, this on its face is a substantial intensification of use. And 5, is the need for a variance self-created? Again, the response has to be yes. The owner has acknowledged this himself. For 152 Hampton, we believe the answer to all of these criteria is a resounding yes. Based on the mandates of the role, the ZBA's response to the variances should be a definitive no. We appreciate that the ZBA values the above outlined criteria, and we ask that they embrace their designated role, enforce the code, and deny the requested variances. On behalf of Save Sag Harbor and concerned residents and neighbors, we thank you for your time.
Arthur Salmon next.
Arthur, are you sworn in?
He's on mute.
You have to unmute.
You have to unmute.
I'm not sworn in. I am an attorney, but I would like for Ms. Couts to speak first if possible.
Okay. Sarah?
Hello?
Hi, Sarah.
Have you been sworn in?
I have not.
Could you put your right hand up? It's going to be hard to see you since all we see is your name. Thank you. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
And state your name for the record, please.
My name is Sarah Counts. I'm Preservation Director at Preservation Long Island.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we would like to, Preservation Long Island would like to submit some comments about this application. And I believe we submitted some previous comments, but just to sort of build on what we've been saying, one thing we wanted to really just, expresses the process of review, especially environmental review, and these criteria that you all have been going over. They're so important because this is how we have good planning and good outcomes for the community. And I applaud the village for this application because I think you have all who volunteer on this board done a great job at welcoming the community and especially the folks who live in this neighborhood. And we totally support the concerns raised by the community that were just addressed. And that's what this process is about. It's about to hear these concerns that get brought forward. Because if we don't have the process, we don't know what the problems could be. So reviewing the environmental stuff that went through the planning board for this application, one thing that's very confusing to me is that the dimensional variances didn't seem to kind of get into that conditioned negative declaration. And just today at 5 o'clock, I believe the village received an email from the State Historic Preservation Office, which was in response to a request for their consultation concerning this application, which was submitted in January. And they just got back today saying that they would like to see some more information about this property concerning the historic and archaeological resources that might be there. So the process of review that we had so far, we never got to that place of we have enough information to say there either is or isn't resources in this property. But this is definitely in an archaeologically sensitive place. It's on the New York State CRIS system, the Cultural Resources Information Database. It comes up as an archaeologically sensitive area. As a matter of fact, the entire village of Sag Harbor is an archaeologically sensitive area. And usually what state historic preservation offices and other places will do is request a phase 1 survey, archaeological survey be conducted to take a look and see, is there anything at this site that we might have missed so far in the history of building and development. And that's okay, that's part of the process, but that's why it's so important. That was never done as far as I understand. I've been looking at some of the documents in previous hearings, but I haven't seen anything about an archaeological survey. And until we have one, we can't say yes or no about archaeological resources because we just don't know. And if you look at the history of this property, it was connected to Eastville, deeply connected to Eastville. The first building at this property was built by Amos Jackson and his family. And of course, they were incredibly important in the Eastville community. They were founding members of the Eastville community. Mr. Jackson was a whaler, a black whaler. And so it's kind of odd that this property didn't make it into the Eastville Historic District. In many ways it should be, even though the Jackson home was torn down many, many years ago, the old home, the 1800s house. But that doesn't mean that site loses its connection to that community, and of course, Sag Harbor is so interesting and wonderful and blessed to have this fabulous community of Black whalers, African-American whalers who settled in this Eastville community. And I guess what our concerns are is that these historic and archaeological resources, which really seem present here, have not been adequately addressed. And part of the comments that I've heard come from the community is this very thing. And even into the more recent time, of course, Sam's is just across the street, a little bit further than Eastville. So this area is very much part of the community of color in Sag Harbor, going back into the 19th century, all the way through Jim Crow, civil rights, up until today. And we really got to dig down and figure out what is that connection before we make some really big decisions about redeveloping this place. Because once the archaeology is destroyed, we can't get it back. Once the building is completely altered, we can't put it back the way it was. So I'm really concerned about the dimensional variances here getting kind of tacked onto the use as an abstract concept. Because you can expand the non-conforming use without necessarily a dimensional variance. But in this instance, we do have a dimensional variance on top of the use. So it seems that that impact of the actual expansion of the physical construction being proposed hasn't really been addressed. What are the impacts to Eastville, which is in the historic district? What are the impacts to Sands, which isn't so far away? And what are the impacts to any kind of resources that we haven't found yet because we haven't looked at this property or the immediate adjacent area? Thank you very much.
I have a question for our city attorney before the next speaker speaks. Looking at the standards that we have to follow, is this not an appropriate discussion at the ARB level, or is it something that should be considered in our deliberations?
You can consider her comments for certain, because you also have to make findings with respect to the character of the community. So I think they're very relevant.
Okay.
One board's findings are not binding on the other in that case, right?
Yes.
Each board separately has to consider the character of the community.
Great.
So
Thank you.
Susan, can I ask another quick question of our attorney? Ms. Couch just raised some significant concerns about archaeological significance and cultural significance of the site and so on. And I think suggested that there might be some process that could be or is already going to be imposed on the evaluation of this site. Liz, can you kind of comment on that? What is required, if anything?
So that you have to check and see whether the property is in an archaeologically sensitive area designated by New York State. And then if it is, you have to usually do a phase 1A, 1B environmental review. It's an archaeological review by a specialist, and it's a report. And the report generally addresses any and all potential archaeological findings that could be there, if it's a heightened, and whether or not a heightened review of that could be triggered because of that report. So based on the findings in the report, and it basically gives a huge history of the site and what could be found there and whether it's necessary to actually look. So, you know, that would be the next step if that's actually in an archaeologically sensitive area. I don't believe our village planner has ever said that our entire village of Sag Harbor is in an archaeologically sensitive area based on the well-known like circles and squares maps. It's called New York State. So we have to check. We will check that though.
I'm just kind of curious whether either Sarah, Ms. Couts, you happen to know whether this property is included, and or does the developer, the applicant, know whether this property is included?
It 100% is. Anybody can look right now. If you go to the New York State CRIS database, CRIS, that's the state database for everything in the state concerning historic resources that goes through our State Historic Preservation Office. You can see if you check archaeological sensitivity, there's a little pull down menu and a check. You'll see it kind of comes up as this gray sort of blob across the landscape. And you'll see the whole village is in one of these. In addition to that, interestingly enough, New York State Museum has a team of archaeologists that does studies across our state, and they highlight areas with extreme potential for different kinds of sites. And it happens that this property is also in a New York State Museum indicated area for archaeological sensitivity. They can be sometimes easy to miss because they're a different thing you got to check. And unfortunately, archaeology and the historic stuff kind of get pushed to different, silos, but they are really closely connected.
Can I ask you just a clarifying question though, which is that by that definition, would every application coming before this board therefore, in theory, require an archaeological survey or study or report?
No.
Require is something that's sort of up to the village and the lead agency and what's going on. But as I understand it, the New York State Historic Preservation Office has recommended one of these surveys be conducted because of the history of this
For
specific.
this
relationship.
specific
Yes.
property, you're
Do
saying.
do you have a letter or something to
She
submit?
said it was sent at 5 o'clock today, so.
Oh, by email or mail?
Was it emailed or was it mailed? Because I don't have it.
I don't have it either.
Well, I mean, I think we should continue to hear from
Yeah.
the public, but I
Right.
also think that we're not anywhere close to being able to render a decision on this based on this new information, as well as a substantial number of folks, including members of this board, who are identifying a variety of ways that this does not meet the 5-part test. So I'm just wondering what's the way forward and what makes the most sense.
What, we have another speaker that
We need
Yeah.
to-
has asked to speak.
Arthur Salmon.
Yes, thank you, Carrie.
Can you raise your, have you been sworn in, sir?
I'm an attorney and I have been sworn at the last meeting on February 15th.
Thank you.
I'm not an archaeologist, but I would just like to add something to Ms. Kautz's presentation. There's an 1873 Beers Atlas of Long Island map that demonstrates that there was a structure on that property that is now probably the remnants of it below ground. And that's documented. There is a 1902 to 1905 Hyde Atlas map of Suffolk County that shows that same structure. And there is a 1915 to 1917 Hyde Atlas map of Suffolk County, again depicting that same tract of land and that structure. So again, I'm not an archaeologist. I can't speak to what that means, but I think it only confirms that there is some sensitive nature to what was there and to this community and to the Eastville neighborhood. But because I'm a lawyer, I'd really just like to address the law. And I thank Chairwoman Mead and Attorney Vail for outlining the code sections that are relevant for our consideration as to whether or not this application should be approved. It's 300, I think, -12.6 and 300 -12.5. 12.5 is incorporated into 12.6. 12.6 is the law regarding non-conforming uses and what criteria must be followed in order for an application to be granted. 12.5 sets out the standard for all variance use requests and what must be proved by an applicant in order for the board to affirm or approve the variance. What's interesting about this case.
Marcus, was this dishwasher clean? You have to empty this thing.
And folks who are on the call, make sure to mute themselves because there's a few folks actually whose audio is on and we're hearing some distracting noises.
Okay, what's interesting about the instant case is that both of those code sections, 12.6 and 12.5, require that the applicant prove that the alleged hardship that the restrictions or the code sections are providing to his property. He has to prove that they were not self-created. If he can't prove that they were not self-created, this board does not have the discretion to grant the variance. That's something a little bit different than what the applicant said on February 15th, and I want to correct what he said. If he cannot prove that the hardship was self-created, or not self-created, I'm sorry, the board does not have any discretion to grant the variance. Now, I said there was something interesting here. On February 15th, the applicant conceded that his hardship was self-created. He conceded it on the record. It should be in the minutes. And what he said was, the hardship indeed was self-created. This will preclude the board from granting a use variance from warehouse office to office retail. While I guess the board has spent years going back and forth about area variances and footage and height differential, there is no basis for this board to grant a use variance for retail here, because the applicant has conceded one of the criteria and he can't prove it. So, assuming that the board follows the law and does not grant the warehouse office to office retail variance, there is yet a second question that you have to consider. And that second question is whether or not the board should allow an expansion of a non-conforming use in this unique, diverse, residential R20 neighborhood. Whether it's, and I think Ms. Vale said it earlier, and I think Chairwoman Mead said it also, this is a non-conforming use. And in order to get some guidance as to what happens in situations like this, I think you must look to the legislative intent of the zoning code, the village code, which is the law. And that appears in section 300-1.3. And in that section, it's titled Legislative Findings, Declaration of Purpose. So the legislative intent of a code is what, when the legislators write it out, they say, this is what we want to do. This is what we want the code to protect. And I'll read it's a very short paragraph here. The chapter is adopted for the purpose of promoting the health, safety, morals, or the general welfare of the village of Sag Harbor, and in furtherance of the following related and more specific objectives. There are 17 specific objectives outlined in this section. And the 12th one, letter L, is to eliminate non-conforming uses gradually.
Okay, Mr. Salmon, we have a 3-minute max for speaking.
And
All right.
I've not been enforcing it. I apologize.
I didn't know that, so I'll just try to cover what I want to say quickly. Mr. Leffler's application flies in the face of the legislative intent of this code. And in order to follow the legislative intent and in order to follow the code, then not only must the office to retail variance be denied, and there is no discretion there, you must also consider, and what I believe, you must deny any expansion of office space at that location. Reason being, the zoning code is written to protect neighborhoods like ours. The zoning.
Thank you very much for your time, but we're going to have to, this has gone way longer than 3 minutes, and I apologize for not raising that earlier. I would like to ask you a question, though, if you don't mind.
I don't know.
It has occurred to me that we are in fact expanding the office uses by allowing an atrium to be built so that the staircases, et cetera, do not have to be in the existing building. If you could comment on that, and if I could then ask Dennis or Stephen to comment, I would appreciate it.
Well, it's really unclear to me. I know that in 2019, there were area variances granted. But I didn't look, and, you know, pursuant to a FOIL request that I made to look at the planning board file and the zoning board file, I didn't see any finding by the zoning board approving any expansion for office space, because that's a use issue, not an area issue. So I think that atrium, which was initially supposed to be office and retail space, which has now been withdrawn, I don't see any basis for the expansion of the atrium because, quite frankly, I don't see where the code countenances any expansion of any non-conforming use in this neighborhood, period.
Okay, thank you. Would Stephen or Dennis like to comment on that point?
I would like to just read something just for the record here. This was part of a letter that Dennis had sent to all of the ZBA members and to you, Ms. Mead, that about the study that was conducted, that New York State SECRA requires the evaluation of magnitude and importance of a project's impact. The study was conducted and a determination of significance dated November 23rd, 2021 was prepared and furnished to the village by the village planner, Nelson Pope and Voorhees LLC. Nelson Pope and Voorhees LLC is retained by and represents the interests of the village of Sag Harbor, not the applicant in this application. The village planner reviewed and analyzed traffic volume studies and trip generation data for the list of the proposed retail uses that I, the applicant, submitted. Upon completion, several of the proposed uses that I had submitted were rejected because, quote, they could potentially result in significant adverse impact to the community plans and character. Other uses, the ones that were approved by the planning board, were demonstrated to, quote, avoid significant traffic impacts in a manner consistent with office use, which is a relatively low volume generator. It is these low impact, low volume generating retail uses these are the ones that were acceptable to the planning board, and these are the only ones that I'm requesting relief for.
Thank you very much. I do want to once again remind you, sir, and you know, you do good development, and we're not questioning that or asking about that. This is purely what we're required to consider. We have to affirmatively find that you are not with any reasonable alternative, that your hardship is unique, and change of use will not cause a result in detriment of any kind to nearby properties, and that your difficulty is not self-created, and it will not adversely change the existing character of the area, and the new use will not be an intensification of that use. So unfortunately, the planning board and SECRA has a different set of conditions than we do. And I would respectfully ask that we hear from the board and what their positions are, whether they want to hold the case, whether they are in favor of the case, or what their comments are, because we've now spent an hour and 6 minutes on this case, and we're all volunteers, and you all have been patiently before us many times, all of you. So I'd like to hear comments from the board, because we have other people that are waiting for other cases.
Ms. Mead, can I just make one statement to try to correct the misrepresentations that were made by Mr. Salmon? I think they were innocent misrepresentations, but first of all, and this has to do with self-created hardship. In the statute itself, 7-712 Village Law, it says that the fact that something is self-created does not in and of itself give grounds to a zoning board of appeals to deny. It's something that you can consider. Mr. Salmon was basically stating that it's gospel. You can't change it. But that's not the case. If that was the case, no non-conforming use would be changed. The other thing where it says about that these non-conforming uses should be phased out over time, that's you're going to see that in almost every zoning code you ever read. And does it get enforced? No. Because the
Well-
boards take a look at it and they say, what does this gentleman own? What do these people own? And what are they doing with it? And if you recall, in the 1800s, Sag Harbor was full of mom and pop stores all over the village. And we've lost most of them. We're down to a handful at this point of these non-conforming businesses that are in residential zones. And a couple of years ago, the village trustees said, why don't we just get rid of these non-conforming uses? And then the question.
Dennis, we
All right,
know.
I understand you're in a rush, so I'll
No,
just.
we're
close
not
my
in a
comments
rush.
with that.
It's just that this
No,
is.
I know.
I'd like
put
to
a lot
have
of
our
time in on it.
attorney, I'd like to have our attorney comment on this.
Yeah, I
and
wish
then
Liz would comment on it. I think she'll agree that.
I'd
the
like
statement
Liz to
that,
comment on it. And
Non-conforming uses.
I'm not
in
sure
and of
it's
itself-
relevant to the discussion right now, but it's not, we're not rushing. But you've been before us many times and we understand exactly what your case is about. I don't think there's any member of the board that has a misunderstanding about that and what is currently permitted.
Okay, thank you.
Liz, could you comment just for the record on the ability of the board to have some discretion as it relates to the hardship issue?
Well, yeah,
No,
you have
it's-
to make findings to support your determination with respect to the standards outlined in the code. And Mr. Downs was making the point that if something is self-created, that in and of itself is not legally determinative of the action. You have to consider all of the standards and apply it to the application, not just one, but generally all. And even, I mean, I have seen decisions actually where it states that you don't have to consider each and every standard. But you have to look at them all and apply it and make findings that relate to the application before you and substantiate your decision that way.
Thank you very
And
much.
you can consider it that standard, of course.
Could we hear from the board now, please?
Well, I would just say that, I mean, first, I am sympathetic with the idea that it would be, by the definition, if nothing could be self-created, then we'd be turning down just about everything that comes before this board, because everything, to a certain extent, when you're making a change to your home or your business or whatever, is somewhat self-created. So it's a bit of a strange standard, but nonetheless, I think it's an important one to apply. So I would just say here that in terms of the other 7 standards that Liz outlined earlier, you know, I can't recount them all point by point, but I heard a number of them that were not met by this proposed project. And so at this stage, I am definitely not prepared to support the variances being asked on this project. And I would want to invite the developer to kind of reconsider this project and to, you know, get some input from the board. I'd be happy to be as constructive as we could be, but this just seems to have so much community opposition and does seem to violate a number of those standards quite clearly that I'm not sure, in fact, how we even got this far with this project. They seem to be in kind of gross violation in a number of instances. So I'm definitely not prepared to support it.
Anyone else from the board?
This is Joe.
I think that
Pam?
yes, I think that the changes that they're advocating will change the character of the neighborhood. And I think that the residents have made very salient points as to why this should not be done. And I am, in terms of not giving an affirmative to what is projected by the building.
Do we have any comments from Joe or Scott?
This is Joe. I think the concerns of the neighbors are valid, and for me, they're determinative. I don't support the variances.
Scott?
I have to agree. I think that as you stated, the standards that the planning board used are different than the ones we used. I mean, they were mostly looking at traffic and things like that, but there are all these other issues to take into account. And it's very hard to be affirmative for any of those 7 the 7 criteria that we have to judge this against. So I think that it's just not feasible.
And for the record,
I would like to say to
Susan?
Dennis and Stephen that you have been patient and you have provided updates to plans and been, listen to everybody. And I really appreciate it. I think you've both done a good job of presenting your points of view. But I don't think we have the votes to approve this. And I'd like to see if there's a motion to be made.
Well, may I just ask a question? If you're not going to, I'm curious to know why everyone would have wanted all of these changes and amendments and everything else, when this certainly could have been discussed initially a year ago. But nevertheless, it seems to me that the basic opposition here is to the change of the use and not necessarily the dimension, the change or the addition, which is provided for by the code. So,
I don't know that we need to get into all of those discussions. We think we conducted this process very fairly and gave you every opportunity to present the best possible case you could. And that took some time. There was also a period of time where you asked for it to be adjourned and it was adjourned. And other things came in the way. For example, Dennis couldn't appear last month. I would just like to see if there's someone on the ZBA board that would like to make a motion.
But Ms. Mead, before you make that motion, may I request that we adjourn the case? Let me speak to Mr. Loeffler about some other alternatives and come back next month if we can. If not, we will probably be withdrawing the application.
Right.
That would be fine. Do you have a motion to adjourn?
Can I just, before we close this out, just to be clear, in terms of setting aside the use variance, just in terms of the other variance that has to do with area, the only two that you're down to then are the pyramid and the parking, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
So there may be ways for you to mitigate that.
Well, I would like to ask a question though, and I asked this in the beginning. And then I brought it out later. If you don't do the addition, then your staircases and lobby, et cetera, have to be done within the confines of the existing building. Is that correct?
Yes.
Well, if I don't do any of the addition,
Correct.
yes, then everything would have to be done inside of the existing building.
So your square footage would be reduced, which is the current circumstance that you're in.
That's correct.
So the addition is to allow for more square footage of office use and you were hoping retail use.
Yes.
Okay.
Madam Chairwoman, can I make a quick comment too, which is one, I just want to clarify and thank you and Mr. Baker for clarifying the issue between the SECRA and Planning Committee kind of approvals and so on, and kind of our process here, because that was a little bit confusing. I'd forgotten that we were looking for a use variance here. And the fact that the Planning Committee and the SECRA process has granted a number of specific retail uses was a bit confusing. So thank you for clarifying that. And the only other thing I just want to say, and this might be an unorthodox comment, hopefully Liz won't get mad at me, but it just seems in a way that the neighborhood and the community and the developer in this case, who's done a lot of good work, elsewhere in Sag Harbor, are pretty far apart. And I'm just wondering, have you come together as a group to say, hey, listen, I'm a developer. This is what I'm trying to accomplish. This is what I ideally would like. The community can give you the feedback, which I think they've done in spades, as to what the problems are, and just see if you can't, at least in some constructive fashion, try and see if you can work out what a acceptable proposal might be. And you're the developer. You have the right to say, sorry, that's not going to do it for me. And I'm going to try my hand further with the ZBA and the town, the village. But I just wonder and would encourage some kind of meeting to see what's possible in terms of what they need, what their concerns are, and what your needs are.
I'm certainly not adverse to that at all. However, it just never occurred to me. First of all, once again, I go back to the point of perception here, because nothing has been done there. If we were to take the existing permit that I have and start doing it right now, anything would be an improvement for that property. Okay, it hasn't hasn't changed in 40 years. Okay, so it never occurred to me, considering my past work in the village and what I've done on Bay Street and the condition of this property the way it is, that there would be opposition to this request. I quite frankly am shocked.
Well, I mean, I'm guessing the community isn't opposed to it being improved. It's just the nature and extent of the improvements, and so.
Well, I mean, I'm not certainly not, it can't be improved to be a storage warehouse.
Well, no,
Can
of
I
course
make
not.
a suggestion? You have office use now. May I make a suggestion that are you interested in sitting down with anybody and we'll defer this, they'll adjourn this for a month? Or shall we make a decision tonight? It's up to you.
No, I would be happy to sit down with someone. I want to develop the building. It's just that developing it in its current state is extremely difficult.
Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn this until next month and we'll leave the
So
public
moved.
hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And please,
Allison,
next month, we're going to hold it to a 3-minute per, if you don't mind, speaker. We did not sort of call anyone out tonight, particularly until the very end. But Carrie, do you need to know who made the motion and who seconded it?
I need to know who seconded it.
I did, Scott.
Thank you.
Okay, going to case number 4, 34 High Street. We need, it's my understanding that this has been adjourned at the request of the applicant, so we need a motion to adjourn it.
So move.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The next case on our agenda is number 5, and that's 254 Hampton Street. Is the applicant present?
Yes.
Would you like to make a presentation of your modified plan?
Yes, I would. Thank you so much.
And you've been sworn in, so we can skip that.
Yeah, so.
I'm sorry, may I just get your name before you start?
I'm sorry. My name is Linda Parisi from Definitive Design and Expediting.
I didn't hear your last
I'm
name.
hearing you.
Sorry, let me see if I can put the voice up.
That's better. That's better.
We can hear you
My
now.
name is Linda from Definitive Design and Expediting Inc. And I'm here for my client. Mr. Kennedy.
Linda, you're gonna have to go closer to your microphone. We can't
And
hear
I
you.
think when you look directly into it, it's helpful when you
Is that
turn your
better?
head. When you turn
Let's
your
see
head.
if I
it
can
doesn't
get,
look
how's that?
better, much
Better.
better.
Okay,
And
perfect.
just give me your last name again. That kept cutting out.
Rui, C-R-U-I-S-I.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry. So from our last meeting to this meeting,
We can't hear you.
Still can't hear you.
I don't know what else to do.
Right
There-
there.
There it's
Get up
good.
closer to the mic.
I won't move. So from the last meeting to this meeting, I did go back to the company to see what we could do to address the issue for the amount of footage in the sky plate. I did give it to Harry for copies for the board members to hopefully review before today's hearing meeting. I don't know if that was the case. Did everybody get a copy of what I dropped off?
You dropped it off today?
No. I dropped it off.
Yeah.
I believe it was on the first.
Yeah,
That's it.
Oh, there you go. Right, perfect. So as you can see, we did slenderize the project home to hopefully accommodate the issues at hand. And this is pretty much the most that we're able to do. We did some interior changes to accommodate. We are only 8 square feet now. And I'm hoping that this will please the board as well as everyone to hopefully put this matter to complete tonight.
Can I just clarify a couple of things?
Of course.
The pyramid law is cubic feet. So I'm a little bit confused because it's the 8 square feet, just that little triangle, but that
Correct.
triangle goes back in dimension three-dimensionally, correct?
See. let me just.
It's
On
not 8.
On our agenda, it shows that the request is a sky plane variance for
900.
987
Right.
cubic feet.
It's actually more than half of that was taken. Let me get
We can't hear you. Can you speak into your
I'm sorry,
mic?
we have more than half of taking it away. To
But
be-
we have no numbers.
We don't have a number because you put it in two
Because
dimensions rather than
they did
3.
it. Let me see if I can.
There are, just before you deal with that, there are a few other issues. One is that I believe at the last meeting, we requested spot elevations and the first floor elevation so they can be tied. This pyramid variance isn't just floating in the air, because at the moment it's taken from a purely flat site, and we know the site isn't purely flat.
So I don't have that.
And the other thing is, and I don't know, Carrie, do we have this house on a survey? I have a survey, but it doesn't have a house on it.
So the survey that you have.
We can't hear you.
Trying to find out what survey actually do you have versus what I have. And I don't think I got that answer. Because I didn't, unfortunately, hand this project in from the very beginning. I actually have been come aboard onto this project pretty much the last 3 meetings ago. So I will have to then get the survey, what you're asking for the elevations. I don't have that. If you could put me on, possibly, I don't know if I can, because I know the time frame has been a little further than usual due to the other case. If you want to see if I can have this to me by the second call, I can make a few phone calls and see if I can get that for you.
That's fine. Well, we can do that,
Well,
but I have a question.
I mean, the basic question though is, Carrie, do we have a survey that shows?
I'm
Oh,
looking.
okay,
But it's never been given to the ZBA because I have the full packet from last.
right. So we can't review this.
No.
Yeah, let's adjourn. it
You
till
have
next
no
time.
survey, you have no survey all for this particular,
No, we have a survey of the property, but it's vacant.
but it doesn't have the proposed project on it.
No.
Correct. So we don't know
Okay.
about the setbacks, the lot coverage,
Okay,
none
so-
of that.
All right, so I will get that for you. Can you put me on to the next meeting? And I just want to clarify, that's the only things that you're missing is spot elevations for the survey as well as the proposed structure that's going on it. Is there any other comments from the board? So I could just address them all at once.
Yeah, I have a question. I looked at your original plan and can you also include information on what your reduction in terms of the cubic feet variance is?
Of course, yes, I can.
So we need
Yes,
spot elevations just where the pyramid is taken.
Mhm.
We need what you're proposing for the pyramid violation, but we also need the first floor elevation of your proposed structure.
Okay. All
And
right.
then it has
Uh-huh.
to be shown on the survey with the setbacks, the lot coverage, all of that sort of stuff.
I'll handle that for you for our next
Excellent.
meeting.
I want to confirm, because I do have a blank large survey with just a vacant lot, but I also have this thing in my folder. That's not a survey, Scott?
No,
That is well,
is.
that's a site plan.
Site
It's
plan.
not-
Yeah.
Site plan,
Yeah.
okay. There is a building envelope, but maybe it's just a kind of theoretical thing.
okay, I will get these addressed and I will be ready for your next hearing, if that is okay with the board.
Do I have a motion to adjourn this to our next meeting? And Carrie, what is that date, please?
So moved.
Second,
April 19th.
can I ask the applicant definitive design? Can you also, and I don't mean to be in any way disrespectful, but can you also work on your audio? Because it was really, really hard to hear you. And it must be distracting for you as well to try and present when we can't hear you and we're constantly asking you to improve the audio. So that'd be
And
helpful.
who seconded the motion, please?
I will, Alex.
No, but who made the
Actually-
motion?
Oh,
Alex, that just so the applicant knows that there is a survey. It's just that it's at a tiny scale.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah, so you just need to add those things to it.
Not a problem.
And if you could give us one at, maybe the full-size paper,
Yes, I will.
that would be great.
I'll drop it down. I'm looking to see if I'll get it tomorrow, and I will drop it down right away. So this way, everybody has enough time to review.
And I understand that our next one is, did you say the 16th, Carrie?
The 19th of
19th.
April.
So the motion would be to adjourn until April 19th.
19.
So
Thank
can we
you.
have a motion and can we have a second?
We did. I thought Scott made the motion, Alex seconded. Oh, no, Ham, did you make the motion?
I made the motion.
Okay, thank you. Ham made the motion and Alex seconded it.
Thank you so much.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. All right, we're moving on to 20 Bay Street.
55 Howard Street needs to be.
I'm
motion to
terribly
adjourn.
sorry. 55 Howard Street, where'd you go? That is going to be adjourned. Do I have a motion to adjourn it until our next meeting on April 19th?
I so move.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I'm looking at the old agenda, so I'm going to, the one from yesterday, not the latest one. I have 34 High Street next. Is
So
that
the
not-
next is 20 Bay Street, number 7 of
Okay.
old business.
All right, thank you. So 20 Bay Street, is the applicant here?
Yeah,
Hi,
John.
the
applicant is here, John Tarbett, attorney.
I'm recused, so I'm disappearing.
Okay, disappear. Oh, the
Are you able to hear me
applicant-
okay?
Just to
Yeah.
refresh everyone's memory, we asked the applicant to look to see if the pool equipment could be put elsewhere, perhaps in the building.
Okay,
And you were sworn in.
apologize, I don't remember that being the request, but I could address that now. So just as quick background, this building was at one point half residential and half commercial. It was a bait shop. And in 2017, I represented the applicant before this board. At the time, the village code allowed conversion, even though it's a village business zone, and a residential use is a prohibited use in that zone. It did allow, the code did allow us to convert from a mixed use to 100% residential. That was a permitted use, didn't require any variances. That was in 2017. So the house at that point was converted from a mixed use to 100% residential. And then in 2020, the applicant decided to add a pool. They went to the ARB, and the ARB granted them that pool. And it wasn't until this fall when they went back to the ARB to ask for the pool's layout to be slightly changed, and at the same time apply to this board for a variance to relocate the pool equipment. To back up, in 2020, the pool equipment was proposed to be in the basement of the house. For a couple of reasons, that has been rethought. One is just access to the house, having people have to get into the house in order to service the pool equipment. And the second thought was that there is a great location on the property that doesn't require access to the house, and that location is within an existing staircase to the second floor, and entirely enclosed. That location happens to be on the Rector side of the property. It's close to the Rector and Bay Street corner, but it would be facing the side yard to Rector Street. The code requires a 15-foot setback for commercial properties to residential when in a transition area where you have a commercial property such as this and you have a residential property nearby. There is a 15-foot setback required for pool equipment, but we thought the zoning board may look favorably upon this because of a couple of things. One is we don't have a residential neighbor on this side of the property. We have Rector Street, and then we have a commercial property. The other reason we thought it might be looked upon favorably is that it's entirely enclosed within a staircase. So there'll be no one will see it, and it's unlikely anybody would hear it, especially in consideration of the traffic on both Bay Street and Rector Street. The second thing that came up when we submitted, and this actually came up when we submitted to the current building inspector, caught this and said that it would just to add a pool alone would require a variance because the use table, somewhat in a confusing fashion, or arguably in a confusing fashion, the use table first permits any accessory structure in a village business district, but then prohibits a private swimming pool. My point had been that my best guess is that the reason for prohibiting a private swimming pool was a holdover from a time when you could build accessory structures on vacant lots, and it would make complete sense that you would not be permitted to build a private swimming pool on a vacant commercial property. I think that no longer is a concern. For one, there's a house here, so it would be more akin to adding an accessory structure to a property that already has a home. And now the code prohibits standalone accessory structures on properties. So other than that, I couldn't think of any reason why there would be a prohibition on private swimming pools on properties that were residential in nature. It just doesn't make any logical sense. I can't think of any possible detriment. And I lost my train of thought, but that's basically the quick background on how we got to where we are today. And we're seeking those two variances.
Can I ask one quick question? If that stairwell is enclosed and it would include the pool equipment, would you also soundproof that enclosure to help minimize any noise?
Yeah, so obviously the benefit here is both to the public, but also to the applicant, right? And so absolutely. It's probably unlikely that would be needed, but as a condition of approval, we would 100% agree to that. The idea here is that nobody hears the pool equipment from the applicant to the public.
Can I ask you another question? As you described it, and as written in our request for variances, the staircase is currently existing.
It is.
Okay. So basically, we're being asked to basically allow for a component to be put within an existing staircase. And that is why the setback variance is needed.
Well, it happens to be that the staircase exists within 15 feet of the property line.
Yeah.
So to utilize that space, which is, it's honestly sort of an unusual situation. The staircase goes to a second floor. It goes to second floor. So it's a rather large staircase that has dead space inside it that happens to be within 15 feet of the property line. So to us, it's a great use of the space because it allows for pool maintenance people to come to the property and access without having to be inside the home. And it also hides it from the applicant. They don't have to look at it. And it certainly, if we add it as a condition that it be soundproofed, there would be virtually no noise coming out of it.
I hate to be dense, but I don't understand how the staircase has a 15-foot setback and the pool equipment would not.
Oh, I'm sorry. So that's probably because I did a bad job explaining it. So the staircase exists and doesn't have a setback. It exists legally. The pool equipment is required to have a 15-foot setback. So in order to so the pool equipment, I'm sorry, the staircase is about 9 feet from the property line.
Right.
And that may not be exact. I think it's 9.4 or 8.9, but assuming it's about 9 feet from the property line, to utilize the existing staircase where setbacks for pool equipment are 15 feet requires a variance.
Right. But it wouldn't be expanding the or minimizing further the setback. It would just be taking advantage of the existing, effectively a variance for the staircase to slot in the pool equipment.
Yeah,
to match that same footprint and therefore that same setback.
Yeah, it's literally using existing space that's there now. It's that otherwise is completely useless. It's a not cavernous, but like it's a hole in the staircase, right? This will be a door added, and you'll be able to access into the under the staircase.
And presumably the staircase was built having gotten a variance on that less than required setback. So in other words,
Correct. The staircase is
legal.
100% legal. I don't think it required a variance. I think it met setbacks when it was built, but it's legal. It's on a CO, set of plans that were approved and stamped. And
okay. Thank you.
Is
Excuse
anyone
me,
in the audience?
I
that
just
would
want a
like-
clarification.
Sure.
At present, is this house designated as a residential parcel or a commercial parcel?
so,
House.
so it's zoned, the property is zoned village business. The house is a legally existing residence with no commercial use. So it's not used commercially whatsoever. It's 100% residential. And it was permitted to do that because in 2017, the code allowed for it. That section has now been removed. So if you wanted to convert it couldn't happen again now, but in 2017, it was permitted to be allowed to do.
Do we have any members of the audience that would like to speak?
I would.
And you've been sworn in?
Myrna Davis.
And you've been sworn in, I believe, Myrna.
Last time, yeah.
But I'll do it again.
I think she's been sworn in on this one.
Yes.
26 Rector Street. I am the immediate adjacent neighbor. I haven't seen the plans. It's a very, there's a lot of lot coverage already. Is that a consideration, how much lot coverage there is?
I don't know if the chair
Variance
would ask.
for increased lot coverage has not been requested.
Because we're very close to the water, and I wonder if that having a pool in that small area is going to displace a lot of water. Is it possible for the board to visit the site?
Well, most of us have gone by it and are familiar with it, so I'm not sure that that's not something this case is.
How big is the pool?
I don't know. I'm assuming the chair doesn't want me to engage in a direct conversation with.
Yes, I think that would be wise. Thank you.
I'll ask if you have a question to me. I'll answer it, Ms. Mead.
I'm asking the board if they know how big the pool is.
Well, we were submitted plans, and it's an irregular shape, but it's 14 by 14.4 by 25.5 by 11.5. So it's, I can't tell you that it's 20 by 10.
By 28.
Yeah, by 28.
Because I really feel that it's prohibited in the district and not typical for this neighborhood. And it's already so tight. It's intensifying a non-conforming use and setting a precedent in this neighborhood of very tiny properties.
Well, I mean, the variance that's being sought is not a setback issue on the pool. It's more the fact that it's locating a pool in what was zoned a business zoning area where pools are prohibited. So that's yeah.
Which is still a commercial property.
No, it's a residential property in a commercial zoning.
No, I think it's a commercial property with the benefits of being a commercial property with a non-conforming use on it.
Liz, could you address that for us?
It's commercial zoning with a residential property. It's a residence on the property. They're using it for residential purposes. The use is residential. The pool is your typical accessory structure to a residential use.
But is the
residential use non-conforming or conforming?
Well, it depends what it said in 2017. Mr. Tarbert has presented that there was a law that allowed the conversion in that time period to allow it to be a residence. However, it's not a permitted use in this commercial zoning district, therefore it's pre-existing non-conforming.
Right.
I mean, I think the conundrum is that it may, if there was a mistake made, it may have been allowing a residential property in a commercial zone back in 2017, but now it is a residential property. So it puts us in a difficult situation.
Just point out that it is the only commercial property, with the exception of maybe something up towards the school in the neighborhood, between Riceham and Rector Street. So, Riceham and Rector, of course, dead end at Bay Street. All the properties heading back towards the old Holy Trinity are residential in nature. So it's an outlier to start with as far as being zoned commercial.
Well, except for on the other side of Riceham, you've got commercial there with dockside.
Correct, yeah,
and
along
all
Bay
of that.
Street. Yeah.
Along Bay Street.
Yes, Marna, we have a 3-minute rule, so we're not following it tonight, so.
Oh, I don't think I spoke for 3 minutes, but I think the intent of the code was for all of the properties along Bay Street to be commercial. So,
Well, it may now be the intent, but the law
No, but
changed in
I think
2017.
it wasn't an outlier. It was always a commercial property until
Yeah,
it became residential a few years ago.
that's right.
So it's just as it actually has been residential probably since before zoning. There was a commercial component to that, so it was a mixed use. So to say that it became residential a few years ago is not entirely accurate. It's been residential for probably actually for 50 to 75 years.
I object to that. That's not true because we've been here 55 years and that whole building was rented and then it was an antique store, the house property. So the owner didn't occupy it.
Are there any other?
I just don't want to get in a. I don't want to go back and forth.
Yeah.
Happy to answer any questions the board has.
Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to say something?
Can we ask Liz again if there's not, Susan, whether, I mean, this is a little bit of a tricky situation because it is a residential property now. It is zone commercial. And we're being asked to approve a pool, which we find with a residential property if it was zoned residential, but is not allowed in a commercial. But the purpose of not allowing it a commercial.
No, you're only applying the 5-part test to the variances before you, to the variance request before you. I wouldn't get so caught up into the pre-existing non-conforming nature of this use.
Okay.
The 5-part test has to be applied to the request for the setback for the stairwell to allow the pool equipment to be in the stairwell and to the other request to allow the pool in the zoning district. And it is an area variance standard that applies to both requests, and that's it. That's what's before the board.
I'm happy to go through the 5-part test if the board requires or wants me to.
So the proposed pool, in terms of its size and location, in terms of a resident, is compliant, correct?
Correct. So a normal pool, let's call it for argument's sake, a normal pool is 20 by 40. Which, if my math is correct, is 800 square feet. This is something probably around 200 square feet. So it would be classified as a pretty small pool. It's somewhat of for argument's sake, a dipping pool. The applicant does have small children. The idea is to be able to use their residential property in a way that a residential property would customarily be used, which would be to add a swimming pool. Did I answer your question? I'm sorry.
Yes, but the only thing I have difficulty with the side yard setback of 8.3 feet.
Yeah, but that's already, the staircase is already built. I'm a little confused as to why they just didn't file an as-built variance for the staircase and then suggest putting the pool equipment inside of it.
Oh, I hopefully that clarified that the staircase is legally existing. It has a CO. It was never called into question. It just happened to have a usable space for us. So we thought we would locate the pool equipment in there. And then we came across the issue of it being legally, the staircase just isn't 15 feet off the property line. So we have to ask the variance to locate it inside there. But, if generally with the 5-part test, you're looking at you're looking at benefit versus detriment. So the question is, I think we've described the benefit, which is allowing for the pool equipment to be hidden and not make any noise on our property. And unless I couldn't imagine any detriment from, normally a variance for pool equipment is because of noise. You don't want to locate your pool equipment too close to a neighbor and infringe upon their enjoyment of their property through the noise of your pool equipment. In this case, it's not from a residential neighbor. We're talking about Rector Street. Our neighbor is Rector Street. So we're looking for a variance from Rector Street. But at the same time, there's no detriment because you'll neither be able to see it or hear it where we're proposing to locate it.
Can I ask for, I think we've heard from the applicant and the audience. Can I ask for a motion to close the public hearing so we can vote on this item?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second, Alex.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I just want to repeat what Liz said. The standards that you're considering are 312.5. There are usual standards. Is that correct? On area variances under item B. Okay, and that is relates to the pool as well as actually the pool is in compliant. So what standards are we using for the pool?
The same area standard test applies to the pool.
Okay.
To allow the pool in the zoning district, in the commercial zoning district.
Right.
That's the 5-part test you apply to.
Yeah.
The side yard setback. Sorry.
Sorry, say that again. I apologize.
And the side yard setback as well.
Right. Are there any comments from the board?
I do have a quick legal question for Liz and for you, Susan, which is that I am close family friends with Myrna and Paul Davis, who are the neighbors who have spoken up tonight. And I don't know if that presents a recusal situation or no.
You have, when you're, so when you, okay, board member Matheson, when you have a situation like this, generally speaking, you have to consider whether or not being close family friends with someone would actually influence your vote in any way, right? Would it create a bias in favor or against an applicant? And here, since you're saying this, I would ask, the applicant how they feel about that, because I'd have to sort of, usually I speak to you off the record and we analyze, whether or not it would influence your determination. But in this case, you've made it, clear. It's good to absolutely, it's very good to announce it because you're disclosing it. And now we have to decide if you feel you must recuse yourself on this matter.
Well, I don't
really
think
a personal decision.
I don't think it'll affect me, but I did want to just flag it, and I apologize for not doing it off the record.
That's okay. Mr. Target, how do you feel about this? Are you okay with this just disclosure?
I am. Mr. Matheson, you seem like a reasonable guy. If as long as you feel comfortable, then we feel comfortable.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments from the board?
I see Mr. Williams' hand is up.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me speak.
We just closed the hearing, Liz.
Closed the hearing? All right.
Did you vote? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is he a neighbor? Are you a neighbor?
I'm not a neighbor. I mean, I live in the community, and I just want to the presenter.
We either need to open the hearing or do something official. So
You'd have to make a motion to reopen the hearing, and it would
someone
have
wanna
to
make a
actually be
motion to reopen
unanimous.
it? Pardon?
It would actually have to be unanimous to reopen the hearing. To hear
I'll
Mr.
make a
Williams'
motion to reopen.
Move.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Have you been sworn in, sir, on this matter?
I have not.
Okay. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
The presenter, and I don't know what his relationship is to the owner, had offered to go through the 5 tests of need, and I can't imagine what they are. So I would really appreciate if we heard how this qualifies under that challenge.
I think when the board speaks, they should identify the standard or standards that they're speaking to, just to clear this up. And I'll certainly, or Liz can recite them as well.
Sure, if you'd like me to. And the applicant did submit a memo to this board outlining how this particular application meets those standards. But let me just tell you what the standards are.
Thanks.
Mr. Williams.
Liz, while Liz looks that up, I did submit it just so I wouldn't have to take your time up going through them.
Excuse me, I'm familiar with the standards.
Oh, okay, Mr.
But
Williams.
if you get a change in zoning, and then you decide that your need changes, that's self-imposed. So I don't understand this. The location of the equipment seems to me to be really a straw dog, because if it's inside a building and it doesn't impede on anybody else, that's not an issue of merit or substance. The issue of substance is a swimming pool in this area. So I want to understand, how is this hardship levied on the applicant, whoever it is?
So I did answer that in my memo. I can address it to the board if they'd like.
That'd be great.
Yeah, the memo wasn't addressed to me, and I'm part of the public, so just a question, that's all.
Yeah, I'm just avoiding answering anybody. So if the board would like, I think this is, it actually is obviously a very unique situation that you probably won't see again. But the hardship is a couple-fold. One is prior to the recent building inspector's interpretation, there was never any mention of a pool being prohibited on a residential property, residentially used property in a commercial zone. So what happened was the applicant went through with a multi-million-dollar transformation of his property into a residential use, always believing, and this is important too, that the village took the position that no variance was needed to add a pool. In 2020, under the previous building inspector, when he went and got ARB approval for the pool. So it's not a self-created, while it's certainly a hardship that he has to come and now ask for the variance, it's not a self-created hardship, because it certainly would have played into his decisions if in 2017 he was told that he can convert his property to a residential use and spend the millions of dollars to renovate it. If you've been told at that time that, oh, by the way, you'll never be able to add a pool to your residential property, it may have played into the decision to go ahead and do that renovation. So I believe the question was, how does this relate to the self-created hardship portion of the 5-part test? And that is that it's our position that it's not a self-created hardship. It's a hardship created by a more recent interpretation of the code. So hopefully that answers the question.
I think it would be beneficial if we put into the record what the conditions on this case should be for consideration. And then I think I'd like to close the public hearing after that and call for a vote. I'll be happy to read them, but Liz, would you like to read them?
The conditions.
12.5 standards, use
Oh,
variance.
sure, the standards, sure, absolutely. Not a problem. So the The first one is whether the grant of the variance will cause an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood or create a detriment to nearby properties. Number two, whether the benefit sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than a variance. Number three, whether the requested area variance is substantial. Four, whether the grant of the variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions of the neighborhood or district. Five, whether the alleged difficulty was self-created, which consideration shall be relevant to the determination of the Board of Appeals, but shall not necessarily preclude the grant of the variance. And in making this determination, you shall consider these factors and consider the benefit to the applicant if the variance is granted as weighed against the detriment to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood or community by such grant.
Can I ask for a motion to close the public hearing?
So
So
moved.
moved. Alex,
Okay, it would be, who made the motion, please?
Joe did.
Joe.
I second it.
Okay, and Alex seconded. Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
It was news to me that the prior building inspector interpreted the code differently, and only after the house was built or during the construction of the house did the applicant learn that he in fact could not have a pool. So to me, that's a fact situation that is pretty unique. Could I hear from the board? I personally don't have a problem with this request, providing that the equipment is soundproofed.
That would be my view as well, and I just want to clarify. I say this with all due respect to my very dear friends, Paul and Myrna Davis, but I think given the ZBA requirements and that it is being used as a residential property, I don't have a problem with either the pool equipment going under the stairs. I think that's a sensible solution. Like I said earlier, I think it should be soundproof to make sure there's no disturbance to the neighbors. As to the pool itself, I think it's just hard to argue, especially since they're not looking for any variances on the setbacks, to deny them a pool when they've been granted permission by the village to use the property as a residence. And I'm no fan of what I consider as a gross overbuild of that property, which is dismaying. But now that the village has made the decisions that it has, I think that we have no choice, and I think it meets the five-part test, both of these various requests.
Anybody else from the board?
Yes, the difficulty that I have is, will we be setting a precedent in terms of homes which were initially commercial, changing to residential, and then having the same dilemma, should they be utilized as a resident and place a pool?
But
don't
that's
think
not our
that we
decision.
can-
We didn't make that decision.
I think that after 2017, that's not allowed. Is that correct, Liz?
I'm not sure. I'd have to double check, but I think this is a really unique circumstance that's actually very easy to distinguish from other applications. I mean, this is a residential use of property that's zoned commercial. I doubt this will come before your board again, but we can certainly distinguish it based on the facts of this particular case.
I agree with that. And I also agree that the alleged hardship in question is unique and does not apply to a substantial portion of the district or the neighborhood. And the requested variances granted will not alter the character of the neighborhood. Anybody else?
Joe, I don't think this will be a detriment to the neighborhood, and I think the facts as they've unfolded will lead to the decision that the pool ought to be allowed.
Do Scott? Oh, Scott can't participate. Do I have a motion?
Motion to
So
accept it?
No, I'm calling for a motion to vote on it. We've closed the public hearing.
You're gonna direct me to
sorry.
write the decision, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna request that the attorney prepare a decision. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay.
Does anybody have anything to add that's on the board? Okay, now we're going to make a motion to what? Adjourn it?
Direct our attorney to draft it.
Thank you. Direct our attorney to prepare a decision for next month's consideration on the 16th or 19th of April.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. We appreciate all your efforts.
Yeah, we really do.
Who made the motion?
I'll make it. So moved.
Second,
Thank you, Susan.
All in
all in
favor?
favor? Aye,
Aye.
Aye.
thank you. According to my agenda, the next case is 25 Liberty Street.
You're correct.
Oh, good. And this was adjourned until this date, so I don't think we need a motion to open it. Am I correct?
We opened it last month, and
Correct.
Dennis had technical difficulties.
And then we adjourned it to date certain, which is this date. So would the applicant like to make a presentation?
Yes, this is Dennis Downs representing the applicant. Property in question is 25 Liberty Street. It's on the west side of Liberty Street at the northwest corner of the intersection of Liberty Street and Hempstead Street. As a result, we have two front yards. This is an irregularly shaped lot. It's in the shape of a backward L. There's 75.97 feet on Hempstead Street, 207.9 feet on Liberty Street. A backwards L of 116.86 feet from Liberty Street to the rear line and 46 feet opposite Liberty Street, and the return of 39.83. So you're not just looking at a rectangular lot. You've got a rectangular lot with a bump out on the end of it. The lot contains 17,438 square feet. That's approximately 0.4 acres. This is the largest lot lying between Hampton Street and Hempstead Street. Part of the application, there is a tax map. If you look at that, you can see the odd shape of this particular piece of property. As to the terrain, there's 10 feet of elevation at Hempstead Street, sloping upwards to 20 feet along Liberty Street to the rear lot line that is opposite Hempstead Street. So the long rectangular portion of the property starts at 10 and gradually goes up to 20 feet. The 10-foot change in grade was most likely the reason why the original owner of the house built the property all the way at the end of Hempstead Street, the very rear of Hempstead Street where the L cuts in, because that's the highest point on the property. And that area is known to have flooding, and I suspect that's why they built in that area. So what the result of that was that all the construction on this lot is down in that L shape, which gives you very little ability to do much with the property because of the narrow depth of the Hempstead Street side, where you're only something in the nature of 70 feet or less. The lot's not deep enough really to be building a house on Liberty Street and having a decent rear yard, or even having a rear yard that conforms to zoning.
Hey,
And certainly
Jerry,
you don't-
am I able to jump in here? This is Ralph, the city, the owner.
I'm sorry?
Am I able to jump in here while Dennis is making his presentation?
Are you the owner of the property?
Yes.
You'll need to be sworn in if you've not been
Okay.
sworn in before.
Okay, great.
So Dennis, have you finished your presentation?
No, I've got another few minutes.
Yeah,
to
I've
go.
got quite a bit more. Let me get sworn in. I just wanted to clarify one
Well, I
point.
need you to get sworn in first, please.
Great, okay.
You raise your right hand.
Yes,
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
I just want to say, Dennis, I think that I don't think it's clear that the house was built there because of it being in that case. I think the property was, as you know, 2 lots back then. So it was.
Yeah, but Ralph, You got in between about a couple of sentences of mine, 2 or 3 more
Okay.
sentences,
All
and
right.
I'm going to be talking about this being
All
a
right,
double lot.
I'll wait till you're all done. Thank
We
you.
don't know when the house was built, whether it was before or after the merger. At least I don't. Anyway.
Excuse me, is that a historical house? Is that a historical house?
I'd say it was built somewhere in the late 1800s.
Okay,
But
thank you.
that's my guess based on the number of houses that I've represented people on different blocks, including Hempstead Street. So, but I may be wrong. I'm not Zach Studenroth from the
Well,
ARB.
you would have to know, you would know because you'd have to go to the ARB.
Yeah, well, Mr. Rossetti handled this case on his own for the last perhaps 2 years and submitted a bunch of iterations to them. So it may have come out in one of those ARB meetings as to when this house was built. I believe it's part of the contributing houses.
You're right.
So it's something to be protected.
Okay.
So anyway, I finished with the grade. I want to talk about the existing improvements. Right now, there's a 958 square foot dwelling, which equals 5.5% lot coverage, principal lot coverage. And that's 158 square feet larger than what the minimum size building can be under the code. So this is one of those houses where it's expected that in this day and age, there would be some improvements made to it to enlarge it, especially with people having larger families, things of that nature, or having just a greater need for the living space. As you know, zoning allows 20% lot coverage, which in this case would equal 3,488 square feet. The applicant's not proposing anything that size, is actually proposing a 2,674 square foot house, which is less than that allowed by the zoning code. So in my opinion, the fact that he's reserved additional space in the house that could be built in the future, should that ever come about, it's not a substantial structure under today's standards. Existing total lot coverage is 1,021 square feet. That's dwelling and any other structure on the property. The proposed total lot coverage is going to be 3,212. That's 18.4%. You're allowed to go to 25%. So we're almost 7% less than what the code requires. Again, there's no effort here to make this the largest possible house. If it was, they'd be building every square inch. As far as the accessory structures are concerned, there's a proposed 509 square foot. Excuse me, the accessory structure is 509. There's a proposed 20 square foot shed, which I think it's in some terminology, it's used as an outhouse, and others it's just used as a shed, depending upon what's inside the building at any given time. There are masonry walls and steps that equal about approximately 135 square feet. The chimney is 12 square feet. There's a proposed pool with the equipment at 391 square feet, making the total accessory lot coverage at 3,212 square feet, all within the code. So we don't need variances for any of that from a lot coverage perspective. The total lot coverage would be 18.4%, where the code allows 25%. Again, there's a difference, this is a reserve of 6.6 or 1,150 square feet less than what the code permits. So there's, again, I'm submitting that lends to the argument that the construction on this site is not substantial. The property has a valid certificate of occupancy. It's number 4295. It's dated November 9th, 2018, for a 2-story, 1-family dwelling with 4 bedrooms, 2 baths, and a shed/outhouse. This is all pre-existing non-conforming. The CO was issued by Building Inspector Tom Priato back in 2018. The accessory variances, so there's 2 steps to this application. One is the dwelling itself and the variances that are necessary. And then there's the accessory structures and the variances that are necessary. So let me get rid of the accessory variances because there's 3 of them versus 2 of the other. There's a front yard setback requirement under 300-4.3 for the shed and 2-car garage, where the setback is going to be from Hempstead Street. This property is all the way in the northwest corner of the house, where there's absolutely no structures in that area at the present time. The property, as I said, was burdened by 2 front yards. So almost everything you do with this site is going to require some sort of a variance because of the 2 front yards. The rear of the property is where all of the original construction was done. And there's 2 possibilities. One is that's the high ground, assuming the lot existed as it does today. Or the other is the fact that these were actually 2 lots. There was the Hempstead Street lot, and then there was the lot that faces onto what you want to call a side street lot. So, well, excuse me, the Hampton Street lot is the long rectangular lot. And then you've got the lot that consists of a narrow frontage, and it goes back, and it doesn't go back very far. So if you look at the survey in this L shape, you've got roughly 150 feet deep from Hempstead Street, and then the balance of the 207 would be the lot that is on Liberty Street. So Liberty Street lot and Hempstead Street lot were once 2 lots. And then before zoning occurred, the lots were both put in the same name. So under today's zoning code and several zoning codes that we've had over the last several years, that caused a merger because in 1971, the Village of Sag Harbor went to 20,000 square foot lots, whereas prior to that, the lots had to be 9,000 square feet. So, and of course, most of the lots in Sag Harbor didn't even meet the 9,000 square foot requirement. They were 5 or 6 or 7,000 square feet. So you got a possible 9,000 square feet being added to a 75 by 150 feet, say, deep lot. The fact that the house is all the way to the rear, where where say the Liberty Street lot is, kind of lends itself to the fact that that was probably the original house. And then somehow over the years, they acquired some additional land for whatever purpose and merged them. So now we've got this unusually shaped lot. So if you look at all the lots between Hampton Street and Hempstead Street, you'll notice that they're all 50 to 75 by 100 foot deep. They're nowhere near the size of this lot. This 17,000 square foot lot almost meets the current code of 20,000 square feet. So the question becomes is, how do you improve this property for modern living by being able to enlarge the main structure without causing additional problems? And the applicant.
Dennis, are you
Yes.
about ready? Are you about to wrap it up?
Yes, I have, let me just see something. Yeah, I just have an environmental issue that I wanted to talk about. So let me switch to the environmental issue. If the variances are denied, the unfortunate result is going to be, it's going to affect the environment only because you're not going to have an IA system built on this particular lot. The fact that we're moving things around and we're asking for these variances is going to require an alternate septic system, which we all know now that they're much better for the environment than the old septic systems where you've got a hole in the ground with some brick and you got waste going into it. So I would submit that a denial of the variance would create a detriment to the neighborhood as opposed to bettering the neighborhood by getting an IA system in there. If there is no IA system and there are no variances and this house stays this as small as it is, chances are it's going to become deteriorated as it is now. There's a lot of work needs to be done to this house because it is old and it has not been lovingly cared for by former owners. This particular owner is in love with this house and he wants to renovate it, bring it back to its original glory, and have a garage and a swimming pool on the property, all of which require these variances.
Could we turn to the owner and then ask both of you questions if we have them, please?
Sure.
Mr. Rossetti,
Yeah, okay, I'm here.
do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think maybe I'll just ask Dennis to, because I know he prepared the memo. Maybe it might be helpful, Dennis, to describe the actual variances to the house. There are two.
It's possible that we have two variances for the house. And the reason I say possible, because I look at the survey and I look at the lot lines and the building lines of the structures that are proposed. And I say to myself, I don't have a rear yard problem technically with the proposed addition on the southwest corner of the house. If you project the line of the proposed addition, if you project it west, you don't hit the corner of the L shape, where you got 39.83, where that meets 148.82. There is a couple of feet in between the projection of the proposed addition going west. So the rear yard would not be measured from the northwest corner of that proposed addition to the corner where those two lines intersect. It's measured slightly to the south of that. And to that, I believe, gives me a much more bigger rear yard, and I'm up to around 30 foot. If I was doing this over again for the first time, I probably would have had the surveyor try to mark that off to give me the exact distance. But just scaling it off with the engineer's ruler, I came out with more than 30 feet. So that would meet the code. So the one variance that would require for the main dwelling is basically the two-story front dwelling, which is only 7.2 feet, which is pre-existing non-conforming, and that's part of the old house. But there's an addition that's going to be 16 feet. As you go north of the addition of the existing house, you go north, it's only going to be 16 feet versus should be 20 feet because it's a historic district.
Hey, Dennis, let me just add one thing on that, is that front yard variance, which is 16 feet where it should be 20, is actually for a roofed porch.
It's a port, yeah, but Ralph, it's connected to the house, so therefore you have to use the house dimension.
No, I'm just clarifying that it's a porch. It's not actually interior living space.
Right, and that porch is about 5 foot wide. So we're somewhere in the neighborhood of 21 foot from the front yard, which would be conforming.
Can I ask that we get a little organized about our comments here, because somebody needs to turn their mic off. And Dennis, are you prepared to wrap up, or?
Yeah, well, the other thing is for the accessory, we've got the garage, the proposed garage, which is at the north end of the property, is 20 feet from Hempstead Street, which if it was a residence, it would be legal, but it needs 35 feet, and it's 32.5 feet from Liberty Street, and that should be 35 feet. But these buildings have been moved around many times on the site to try to get the least amount of variance, and this particular site plan does that.
I think we should start looking at the setbacks, individual setbacks.
Dennis,
we have a list on our agenda. If someone needs to mute, but does the property owner have any other comments?
I was just going to make a comment to Dennis about that 16.1 foot setback, rear setback. I believe you're right, because the way the code reads is you're supposed to go perpendicular to the property line. And if you went perpendicular from that corner, you'd miss that.
You missed the corner. Right. Yeah. That's what I was trying to say.
So that's
why
not
when
really,
I scaled it out, I thought I was okay.
Yeah, I mean, technically, I think that that's correct.
But I tell you, if you look at a first glance at the survey, you say, oh, you need a rear yard variance.
Yeah.
You know, until you start doing some diagrams on it like
So
I
would
did.
that eliminate a variance?
It would eliminate one variance, yes.
And the one it would eliminate is the first one. Am I missing something?
Yes, it's the one that deals with rear yard setback for the.
I mean, we'd have to have Chris confirm that, but I believe
Yes,
that
we
that's
do.
true. But I believe that that's true.
Okay, so we need Chris to confirm that. Now, are there any other comments and questions for Dennis?
Yes, I still have one. Because initially, when you were proposing this, you wanted to utilize the historical house, quote, if it is an historical house, as an accessory house. And now you have changed. And
Sam, this is a completely different application.
Yeah, it is.
I understand that. I understand that. But the concern that I have then, why are there variances? You have such a large piece of property.
Well, because of the fact that it's only, 75 feet deep on Hempstead Street. It's a large piece of property because you've got two lots being put together. And you're
They're already
to,
put together though, Dennis.
yeah, they're already put together. Yeah, they've merged by law. They've merged. It's not like we're putting them together to do the project.
I ask you one more question, Dennis. Can they be unmerged?
Mr. Rossetti tried that, and he went to the planning board and they turned him down.
And has this house been designated by the ARB as an historical house?
To my knowledge,
it's a contributing structure to the
house.
National Register Historic District. So he would have to get ARB approval.
Right. Okay,
Correct.
then.
And we actually, Mr. Rossetti submitted an application to the ARB for a house that did not require any variances. Unfortunately, it required an addition going from the main house or going from the original house north towards Hempstead Street, and it looked like a railroad car, and they turned that down. They rejected it flat out.
Okay.
So that's why this thing has evolved to the point where it is now, because we're trying to eliminate as many variances as necessary and to gain the acceptance of all the boards. Because
I have a couple of questions. That you show walls next to the pool, and I can't. Does that mean PROP means proposed walls?
Yes. Walls and steps.
Well, wouldn't the walls need a setback variance?
Not if they're 5 feet from the property line.
No, actually, walls need to be just 3 feet.
Oh, 3 feet, I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah.
And are they 3 feet?
We have that. If you look at the survey, you'll see there's a 3 foot.
Oh, I see. I see the 3 feet. Thank you.
And that's at the tightest part. It actually increases as you go further back.
Sure, goes to 6, I think.
I think it would be
wider as
very,
you go south.
I was just going to say, I think it would be very hard to put an addition on this existing house without any variances because it's so close to the street as it is. It's only 7.2 feet from the street. So, I mean, there's a difficulty, especially since it's in the corner, which is the most difficult part of the site. So,
and Scott, that's characteristic of the neighborhood. Most of the houses are under 10 feet to the street.
Right, yes.
And also I would add to that, Scott, that the applicant could have tried to take advantage of that existing 7.2 foot setback and had the building, continued at that kind of distance, but instead they set it in substantially to avoid that, to kind of conform with the original setback, which is a good thing.
Plus, we were trying to reduce the size and mass appearance of it from the street.
Right.
And that came about from ARB recommendations.
Yes, Ham.
Has the ARB seen have they given their grace to this particular building?
Ralph, can you answer that? Because I wasn't present.
Sure. It was presented informally to the ARB in November of last year, and they, after the other two that Dennis described as a railroad car, this one in November was received much more positively. They didn't, it was informal, so they didn't vote on it. And, you know, they went as far as they could within reason to say, you know, it's in the right direction. I think
It was part of a discussion calendar, Ham.
Yeah.
Since we have to ask Chris to confirm whether or not the first variance request has to go away, and since we're supposed to reduce variance requests if we possibly can, may I suggest that we hold this and ask Chris to clarify that for us?
Don't we want to at least address the other ones just so we can get this all done at once?
Well, if there are other ones that we think he's already looked at this, has he not, Liz?
No, I think what Alex means is, can we
had
just
to look
review
at
the
it.
project?
Down.
Yeah, review the project as a whole, because there might be other things we need Chris or somebody else to look
Absolutely.
at or consider.
Alex, I believe Chris has already done that in order to do his turn down letter, but it can't hurt to ask him again.
No, I'm talking about, oh, you're talking about for number one.
No, for the whole thing, the whole.
No, I'm saying that this board, rather than just deferring this now, let's go through the other three variance requests to see how the board feels about those before we adjourn this until the next. We're gonna have to wait no matter what, because we have to clarify something with Chris on number one.
I
But
understand.
I'm just saying, let's finish this discussion so we can kind of, you know, take our temperature on items 2 through 5. And I have just a quick, very silly question, which is, why isn't that proposed accessory structure identified as a proposed accessory structure and garage? Because in the agenda, it refers to it as a garage and accessory structure, but not on the survey. So shouldn't that be labeled a garage?
It was an oversight.
You're talking about the north garage.
Yeah, the northwest proposed structure and garage.
Okay, we can get the surveyor to add the words storage.
And garage.
I mean, most garages are storage areas.
No, but it's represented that it's a garage. And that's
Well, it
different than
is.
storage, and it's different than just a straight accessory
Not on
building. I
this-
think
not on my thing. Not on my
think it's-
survey.
an
My
important
map
thing.
says proposed accessory structure. So you just want me to label that garage?
I'm just saying, I just want to confirm. I don't know if it needs to. Liz will tell us whether the survey needs to be entirely accurate in terms of its description, and garage is separate and distinct from an accessory structure. But I'm just saying,
That is definitely a garage because we've got a proposed driveway up to it.
I think.
you know, I
Yeah,
understand
it's
that.
a
It's
garage.
not labeled. It's not labeled that way. So,
Sure.
Correct. Good point, Alex.
Mr. Benz corrected.
so how do we feel about these other things?
I'm sort of, I have to say, this has come a long way from where you started. And I think this is the best proposal of the 3 or more that you've done. I guess my only question is, does the garage have to be 20 feet from Hempstead? Could it be a little bit farther from Hempstead?
Yeah, that was mine as well.
I
mean, I think
concur
it-
with that because it's 35 feet for the code and he's 20 feet, and that's a substantial amount. And even in the historical districts, they may say 25 feet, but here he has, I think, since he's building this, he should build it to almost to code.
Well, there's also a sort of a point related to that, and I think I brought it up last time. You have 2 driveways, and this driveway next to the proposed garage is absolutely huge. And if you reduce the size of that, you have the freedom to move that garage around.
Yeah.
Is it possible that I can opine on this or add anything?
Of course.
Sorry?
That's what we're here for.
I wasn't sure. So first of all, the reason for the garage placement, and this was discussed with the ARB as well, was primarily to continue the line of the streetscape along Hempstead. And it was actually thought favorably. I don't have a problem moving it around. I'm just really, I'm happy to move it around, but I think, you know, one of those difficult situations where this board may have one opinion and another board may have a different opinion. So,
Yeah, but we're charged with reducing the amount of a variance, and the ARB can't approve anything that we haven't approved in terms of what the area variances are.
okay.
So if you
We
move it
can-
around,
It can definitely be 35 feet back from Hempstead. It probably would be oriented differently, so that it, you know, that egress and ingress would be practical. So
I do think though it is something to consider because the properties on Hempstead on that side are fairly close to the street, and if the ARB was considering streetscape, that is an argument to keep it on the closer side. I just think 20 feet seems very close.
Yeah, I would just say that I liked Susan's idea of reducing the driveway size and therefore giving you more flexibility to relocate slightly that garage. And maybe if you could get somewhere between 20 and 35 feet, that'd be in better shape. I think your item number 5 is such a small variance that I'm not worried about that one. And I don't know, Scott, whether we're concerned about, you know, putting a garage or accessory structure in the front yard, because that's item number 3. And then item number 2, I'm not clear on exactly what that one is saying. That's for the proposed northerly addition. I see that, and I see the 16 feet. So
well,
what's
item two relates to the addition to the main house and the part that has a porch on Liberty. That's item 2.
Right, because they're supposed to have a 20-foot setback there? No.
It's a front yard.
Front yard,
Correct.
oh.
Correct.
Because it doesn't say what the variance request is for item 2. It doesn't say what the delta is that you're looking for.
It's 20 feet, 20 feet.
well, it's 16 feet
It's,
is
the request
what
is,
it's shown, so it's-
for the addition, the request is 16 feet from Liberty Street versus 20 feet
right.
in the historic district. So if I'm hearing everything correctly, we need to reduce the size of the driveway, alter the shape, not the shape, but alter the diagonal effect of the garage near Hempstead Street, straighten it out, keep it 15 feet from the westerly line, and bring it back 35 feet. Is that correct?
Well, you don't necessarily have to bring it back
I don't think you have to bring
35.
it towards 35.
You know, somewhere between 20 and 35. We just thought 20 seems, I mean, I personally, I agree with Alex. I'd be willing to make, you know, an adjustment there. It just seems that 20 feet is too close. 35 feet may seem way too far because I know that streetscape is an element.
Yeah, well, if you notice, the house immediately to our west is like probably
Yeah, it's very
7 feet.
close.
Yeah, it's right next to the Tom Gardella's house. What we were trying to do is maintain that streetscape along Hempstead Street, where you see one house is a couple of feet behind the other. We have no objection either way you want us to go. If you want, I can do 30 feet. I could do 25 feet.
Well, let's hear from the public. We do have to hear from the public.
We're not, yes. Is the board finished with the questions and comments?
Oh, well, the only thing that Alex was asking about the garage and the front yard, and I think in this case, it does make sense because it maintains a building on a streetscape, and we sometimes do that.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily want garages in front yards, but in this case, it may make sense. You know, sometimes we put them between the street and a swimming pool, so I don't necessarily have a problem with the garage in the front yard.
Yeah, I'm okay with that too, especially because we want the house.
Do we have any comments from the public that may change some of our minds? And could you state your name, and I have to put you under oath?
Yes, Gloria Brown.
Could you hold your right hand up? Do you swear to tell the truth, whole truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, I'm very happy to hear about that you think the driveway was much too wide, because I was concerned about that. But my other concern, which I addressed July in the first application that Ralph put in, was the fact that, the two driveways that are exiting on Liberty Street. As you know, Liberty Street is a very narrow street. This is what, I mentioned in July meeting. A couple neighbors had already addressed that as well. I had mentioned to Ralph a while ago about if you wanted to, if you absolutely had to have the extra driveway, why couldn't that exit onto Hempstead Street, which is a much wider street? Liberty Street has many cars on it from their owners. As pointed out, these are very small houses on our block. I live directly across from where Ralph is building. And some of the neighbors don't even have driveways, or they have very small driveways. So many of the cars are even parked on, their own cars are parked on Liberty Street. And to have two driveways exiting and entering on Liberty Street, I think is really going to present a problem. And I really would prefer to see something happening on Hempstead Street. That that's it.
So your basic concern is that there are two proposed driveways allowing cars on and off Liberty Street, and you would prefer to see one of those or the driveway on Hempstead. The only problem with
yes, I mean, the original driveway is on Liberty Street on the side of the original historic house. And the new one that he wanted to add, which I'm not sure why he needs two driveways, but I mean, if that is something that the zoning board agrees to, then, it's just as I said, the block is extremely narrow. I mean, only, you can't have two cars coming and going at the same time.
There's really not a variance request before us dealing with the driveway. Only the location of the garage would have an impact on that. But do you have any other concerns besides that?
No, I mean, I see, he reduced the house since the last time
Okay. So thank you very much. We have another hand raised. And your name, please?
You just have to unmute.
Hi. Hello, it's Sarah from Preservation Long Island again.
I think I need to swear you in on this case.
Sure.
You swear to tell the truth, whole truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
And just a reminder of the 3-minute limit.
Yes.
Okay. We submitted a letter in July and December, and the December letter was CC'd to the ARB. And in both of those letters, we indicated that this building is contributing to the historic district. And not only is it contributing, it's in the middle of Eastville, and everything around it is contributing on Hempstead and Liberty. So in terms of an impact, you're impacting not only this historic property, but all of the properties around it. And once again, it seems like the application has really insufficiently examined that. And I frankly, Preservation Long Island, we work with members of the community. We work closely with our colleagues at Eastville Community Historical Society, which is just, around the corner on this street. And I would strongly encourage the applicant to speak with them, because they have a deep understanding of the history of this community. And once again, I must say, the court. So a couple of things that is very shocking. Why are these really? They're going to intensively change the character of this property. Setbacks, the way things are positioned on a property, are all part of the historic character. And because it's in the historic district and it's contributing, it means these are parts of the character that are protected, which means we're not supposed to change them. So also, if you read the letter and maybe Mr. Down saw it or the applicant. We also included a memorandum of comment, which was prepared by Dr. Allison McGovern, who is an archaeologist and a historian, studied the area extensively, also did the nomination for SANS, very familiar with the community, especially the Native American and African American community who settled here in the 19th century. And she found this building on a map in 1854 and the lot next to it, this funny little L shape, which indicates that these folks were there in this early community of color. And I have to say, there's very few of them in the United States at this time. This is the early emancipation period, early abolition. It's before the Civil War. We have very, very few places where people of color could own property, could create a community. This house is one of those. And the woman who lived there previously was a direct descendant of Thomas Fortune and his wife, who summered at this house. She later owned the property, their granddaughter.
Seconds.
This is
Sarah,
not
can I
unfortunate.
just ask a quick question, which is
Sure.
um,
So the history of
this
the
is not-
land
this-
use, I just want to be clear. The weird problems with this property, they're not problems. They're the historic character. And the land use happened differently because it was a community of color, because they had different kinds
can I just ask you,
of-
because you have limited time, so I just want to make sure you use it effectively, which is that I'm very sympathetic with everything you're saying, and
3
and
minutes is up.
that preservation is
Yeah.
very important. But how specifically does what you're saying address the variance issues that we're being asked to consider here?
More importantly, these
don't
are issues that should be delivered to the ARB. And
Yes.
I
Yeah.
believe what we're going to do,
That's the
and I'm
point
going to
I'm making.
support this, is we're going to adjourn this property while the building official has a look at one of these variances. We're going to ask the applicant to speak with neighbors. And I'm also going to ask the applicant to go back and get another visit with the ARB.
And one more thing.
And that
in
is,
my-
excuse me, but that is where you should be speaking, because we take special note if it's in a historic district and if it's a contributing structure. But the history of the site and the history of the area is of utmost importance to the ARB.
But how does a dimensional variance in a historic district get through to the ZBA without passing the ARB first for a certificate of appropriateness? And another
Because
thing
the
that's
ARB has no legal authority to approve something that doesn't comply with zoning. So it has to go to ZBA
right,
first.
but what is the procedure if you're in the historic district? Does the ZBA refer to the ARB? What is the procedure? Because it's
No,
a
the
really
ZBA
big,
ZBA
really big
considers
thing.
it's the 5-part test in the law, and it applies the law and the standards that it's required to apply to the application before it. And the ARB has separate jurisdiction. And because of all the reasons you're stating, it could, even if the ZBA approves it, the ARB can deny it. So it's not a given that an
So,
application is
I have
ultimately
heard,
approved.
because I listened to the addition proposal that was before the ARB, which was completely different than this application. And a lot of the people that we spoke with in the community who came to us and tried to help navigate this application was the
Excuse me, but
problem.
that's why I'm
Right.
going to ask them to go
Right.
back to the ARB
Okay.
and bring some feedback.
It was I'm speaking on behalf of the folks we spoke to in the community. It was incredibly difficult to understand what was being proposed before what board.
So what was in front of the
That is only
ARB
one
was just for a discussion item. And it was pretty much the same application. So I think
Well,
maybe
one application was for an addition.
you should
on the
probably
house.
go to the property.
Can I contribute a little bit? Maybe I can clarify your comment. First of all, I think it's important to address Ms. Brown's comments. Lori, I think you know that there have been 2 driveways on this property, for a long time. One that's really close to Hempstead and the other one that's close to the house. Both are being looked at as relocating. The one that's next to the house now is moved to the other side because, quite honestly, the front door of the house, which was moved in 2012,
Right.
on the south side of the property. And so in order to go to the front door, you have to walk all the way around the house. I think it's, that's one of the things that we're trying to address. The other driveway that I think you're concerned if it's going to be near your, the gate where you park, it's actually behind your house. So it's 70 some feet off of Hempstead. So it's further back than what you may think it is. And the reason for that driveway is because if you have a garage, you kind of need a driveway. Now, if people think Hempstead's a better solution for that, you know, I guess we'll listen, but I think there's arguments on both sides of that one.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
This case is going to be adjourned, and I'm going to ask for if there's anyone else in the audience that would like to speak. And then I'm going to ask for to close the public hearing, to leave the public hearing open, and ask that the applicant discuss the driveway location, et cetera, with the neighbors and the development, and that they perhaps go back one more time to the ARB if in fact the plan is different, to get some feedback. Now, is there anyone else that wants to speak to this application? Okay,
Mr.
do I
Williams
have,
has his
I'm
hand up.
sorry?
Mr. Williams has his hand up,
Okay, Mr. Williams?
and then there's another person after that.
Okay, Mr. Williams, or have you have not been sworn in on this application, have you?
Not on this application.
Can you raise your right hand?
It's raised.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
The developer here, the owner here, finds himself in a tough situation. He has, honestly, I'm on the ARB, and he's been a ping pong ball between these two organizations. If I remember correctly, we found his latest modification to be the most desirable, or preferable, I should say, out of what we had seen previously. And
Mr. Williams, I'm going to stop you right there.
Okay.
Do you have a resolution authorizing you to speak on behalf of the ARB tonight?
I'm speaking as a citizen, not as a representative.
Okay, I just want to make sure the record's clear then. Thank you. You're speaking as a citizen.
That I was. I'm just want to say that and thank you for that, Ms. Vale. What I just want to say is that we said, well, we can't approve this plan because or we can't really give it serious consideration. Let me rephrase this. Because it includes a plan that will require zoning waivers. So they should get the waivers before we review it for its acceptability. So he's been, I think that's a fair representation. So I think, you know, and I don't want this to indicate my feelings about the plan one way or another, but I think he's in a catch-22 here. And that's
We understand.
Yeah, Ms.
Okay.
Mead, can I just say something? Ham, who do we get the waiver from?
It's not a waiver. He's referring to the variances that are being requested today.
Well, that's why
Am I
we're
correct?
here.
Right.
That's why we're before the board. We can't go to the ARB for an official determination.
We
until
understand that,
finish.
Dennis.
Yeah,
We
so-
understand that. Sarah, you have spoken and you've used your 3 minutes. I'm going to go to the other person that has their hand raised. Carrie,
Yes, hi. My name is
sworn
Wallace
in?
Johnson. I'm the neighbor to the south, to the west of Mr. Rossetti's property.
Can you please state your name again for the record?
Wallace Johnson.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to state that I am in support of Gloria Brown in terms of the two driveways, and I understand that we need to go to the ARB to discuss that directly. And I intend to do that, but I wanted to voice my opposition here. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, sir. You state your name and raise your hand.
My name is Chris Johnson. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
we
Do
Oh,
you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
yes, I do.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I did have some other, yeah, basically the two driveways on Liberty Street, I think is a little bit restrictive for the rest of the residents. You know, I'm at 19 Liberty Street, adjacent to the south. My sister is Wallace Johnson. And, you know, we basically have two cars. And you know, it's hard to get into that driveway as it is. And there's really only one car that can come up that street without another car stopping to get up or down the street. One car has to stop for the other car to pass pretty much. And then when you talk about the driveway that's proposed, yes, it may be a little bit past Gloria's house, but past Gloria's house, they've been long-term residents for over 30, 40 years. That we've been there at least 30, 40 years. And they have 3 people who have cars, and there's only one spot for them. They have a big lot too, but there's only one spot for them in the driveway, and they have to park 2 cars on the street, which is definitely going to be a problem for him coming into the into his driveway, or whoever's going to be living there go into the driveway. So you know, it's and if they have to park on the street, then there's really going to be another problem. So I think that the Hempstead driveway with the that leads into the garage, if possible. I don't know how you would do it, but I would see that it's very wide street. You know, if necessary, he has a lot of guests. To park on that street, on Hempstead Street, on the side. There is a driveway right next to, presently right next to my house, which I'm accepting and lived with for the last 30-something years. Not a problem. But, you know, in consideration, and then there's 2 houses opposite us that have no driveways.
Right.
30 seconds.
Okay, so I just, you know, wherever I have to talk about it, I'll talk about it.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Mead, may I make a statement, Dennis Downs? I mean,
Yes, but then I'm going to ask that the hearing be adjourned, please. So,
okay, so.
yeah,
I
you've
mean,
had
the
plenty of
purpose
time to
the
visit.
driveways is to keep cars off the street. We know it's a narrow street. We're doing off-street parking on our own property. The other neighbors are forced to park on the street. So we're eliminating some of that traffic.
Wait, we're not asking for, you're not asking for a variance for a curb cut?
I don't need curb cuts.
So
or anything.
I would appreciate that kind of discussion in part goes to the ARB.
Correct.
Okay.
Can I just bring one question
Sure.
for Dennis? So Dennis, there are 4 bedrooms, so you're required to have at least 3 spots, right? Is that
Well,
correct?
you got 2 in the garage and then you got.
No, I know, but what's the requirement? Liz, do you know, is it 2, when you have 3 bedrooms, it's 2 and then each that.
It's 1 for the first 2 and then 1 for and then 2 more. So I need 3 spaces.
It's the bedrooms minus 1.
So 3.
Right.
And that's off street, not
Right,
garage.
off street, you're required to have, just
Off-street.
so everybody understands, there is a parking requirement.
An off-street parking requirement.
Off-street parking requirement, yes. Yeah.
I'd like to suggest that we make a motion, someone makes a motion to adjourn this to April the 19th. Ask that Chris look at the first variance to confirm that it's not required or whether it's required. Ask the applicant to visit with the neighbors and come back to us on the 19th. Do I have a motion?
That's a clarification, Susan. I agree with everything you said. I think those were all excellent recommendations. I'm just wondering, wouldn't we still kind of take a straw poll with the board just to give the applicant a sense of where we are on the 5 different variances, just to kind of move the process?
Oh, we could certainly do that, but the public hearing is going to be open, continue to be open.
Right. Okay. Well, yeah, I'll defer to you.
So I would prefer that we move on because we have a couple of more cases and some people have been waiting a long time.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay.
Who
Do I have
made
a
the
motion?
So move.
I made the motion, I think. I made the motion, Scott.
Okay, Scott made
Second.
the motion, Pam seconded. It's going to be adjourned until April 19th. Chris is going to be asked about variance number 1, and hopefully the applicant will heed our request that he visit with the neighborhood.
Ms. Mead, are you going to have your board write to to Chris, or do you want me to get in touch with him?
Liz, how do you want to handle it?
Dennis can get in touch with him
Okay.
Fine.
and yep, that's fine.
Thank you all very much.
Fine. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, we're on number 9, and that's 18 Meadow Lark Lane. Is the applicant here?
I am here. Good evening, Brian Locasto with the Adam Miller Group, attorney for the applicant. I can probably keep this relatively brief because we've had a lot of applications and we had a good testimony last time we were before you. As you may recall, we presented our application. There was some neighbor feedback and comments from the board that requested that we make efforts to reduce the size of the house, to reduce the pyramid relief being requested. And the applicant was able to work with his architect and was able to reduce both the width of the house and the height of the house to reduce over half of the requested pyramid relief that was before you at the last meeting. I appreciate you may have just received our submissions in the last couple of days, so you may not have had the full chance, but I can go ahead and put it on a screen share and quickly walk
Could
you
you
through
do
it.
that, please?
Absolutely. You can see the plans, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, so these are the revised plans showing this is from the street view. At this corner, we have now 0.36 cubic feet of pyramid infraction from the street, where we were at, I think 114. So, and then again, we reduced the rear side, so it's significantly reduced the pyramid on both this dormer and the side. So we went from 1,575.69 cubic feet to 683.87 cubic feet. And the house has now been reduced to a width of 34 feet. Both of these side yard setbacks have been reduced. We're now at 15.3 feet from each side. We were at 15 on the prior submission. And the result also provided a reduced lot coverage, or we're now only asking for 117 square feet of lot coverage. The 1.6% minor relief and well within what's been requested.
Could you do us a favor? Could you look at the agenda?
Yep.
And go through each one of the variants that are requested?
Absolutely.
Number 1, I've got it's 683 instead of 1,000.
Yeah, so we originally applied for 1,575.69 feet. We're now asking for 683.87 cubic feet.
Okay.
We had a lot coverage was at 2,005 square feet. We are now at 1,990 square feet. So reducing the 1.8% to a 1.6%, or a request of 117 square feet.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. Again, I mean, this is a narrow lot. We have a house that's currently less than 10 feet from the property line that's being removed. So we're removing that nonconformity and what we view as a minor variance. And, the applicant worked hard to accept your concerns and comments.
I'm fine with this now.
I am as well.
We still have to hear from the
Do we have
public.
anyone from the audience? Terribly sorry. We shouldn't have jumped ahead. Anyone want to speak?
I don't see anybody, Susan.
Okay. Then we can go ahead and hear from the board. Let's close the public hearing. Do I have a motion?
I so move.
Second?
Second.
Scott and
So
Joe.
motion by Scott, second by Joe to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
And now, could we have some comments? I'm perfectly fine with asking Liz to prepare a decision. Any comments by any of the board members?
I'm fine. I mean, I said I'm fine with it.
So am I.
I'm comfortable as well.
They made a compromise. And I accept.
I'm fine as well.
Okay, do I have a motion to ask Liz to prepare a decision?
So moved, Alex.
I second, Scott.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are
Thank you
now,
all.
you're welcome. We are now in new business. 18 Bluff Point Road. And can I have a motion to open the hearing, please?
So moved, Alex.
Second, Scott.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. I had difficulty figuring out what was there and what was not there. There's nothing that we were provided that would give us an indication of what the variance was for, unless I missed something.
Liz, could you give us just that little history of this?
I don't know if the applicant's going to present, but my understanding is that this was presented earlier and then withdrawn from the board's consideration.
Because
Is that the history you're looking for?
Yeah, it was mainly because we were going to deny it, correct?
Right, you gave an indication that you were going to deny the application, and so the applicant withdrew it.
Liz,
But
if
it
I,
And
seems-
I think they didn't have harbor committee at the time, and that may have been a concern for the board. I'm not sure.
Is the applicant here?
yes, hi, I'm Haley Willis, attorney for the applicant with the Adam Miller Group in Bridgehampton.
Great. Would you like to present?
Absolutely. So just to go over the history, prior to my firm's involvement, this was before the ZBA, but as Liz said, without the Harbor Committee approval, that was a bit challenging at the time. And there was also a violation issued of the property. So that's when our firm became involved to deal with the court on the violation. And then we proceeded by going back and starting with the Harbor Committee, and we have obtained their approval. And perhaps some of the confusion as to what's there versus what's proposed is because this is an application to legalize an as-built deck that was built without the requisite approvals. But we now have both ARB and Harbor Committee approval for the deck. So the variances that we are seeking are to have a front yard setback in the technical front yard on the waterfront side of the property for 10 feet where 35 feet is required. A variance to have the accessory structure built in the technical front yard, again, on the waterfront side of the property, and a lot coverage variance for 529 square feet, which is equal to 1.7%. And our Harbor Committee approval, just so that you're all aware, was conditioned upon a few things. Most significantly, a substantial revegetation buffer that's going to be imposed on about 3 sides of the property, as well as the abandonment of the old septic and installation of a new low nitrogen system.
I have a question. I have 2 questions. Could you restate why the court was involved in the beginning?
A violation was issued on the property.
And
For building the deck without a permit. For building the deck without a permit.
Okay. Can I ask why that happened, since you knew that your client knew that it was required that he get ZBA variances and we denied it, or he withdrew it? I'm not sure which.
It was already built. In my understanding, again, this was before we were involved with the project, but in my understanding, it was built before he ever went to the ZBA. And that was just an unfortunate circumstance of his builder told him he didn't need a permit. He built the deck and quickly realized that was not accurate.
Poor builders, they're always blamed.
Yeah.
Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to speak? Well, I think we should probably first close the public hearing. If no one has any more questions of the applicant. Do I have a motion to that effect?
So moved, Joe.
I second, Scott.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
we are constantly being asked to approve things after they're built. And I really need to understand how this happened. I mean, both the ARB, did they issue a final decision? How
They
could
did.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, they really
It's
can't
theirs
issue
is
a final
conditioned.
decision.
Yeah,
without
their
variances.
approval will be conditioned on our ZBA approval. But informally, they've gotten as far as they can without issuing the approval in the absence of your variance.
So it's not, well, this, we just closed the hearing, but so it's not correct to say that the ARB approved it. Has the Harbor Committee approved it, Liz?
We have a conditional approval, yes.
Once again, could I ask our attorney? Liz, has the
The
Harbor
Harbor-
Committee?
Yeah, I think we can rely on the statement that the Harbor Committee approved it conditioned upon extensive revegetation, and probably we can get that decision if you want to take a look at it. And it's probably
Okay.
also convincing that they're replacing an existing septic system with a low nitrogen system on the water. That probably also influenced the Harbor Committee's decision because it's legalizing an already existing structure and getting more of a revegetated buffer area, and then also getting the low nitrogen system. So yes, I don't have that decision in front of me, but we can certainly get a copy.
Did they have a building permit for any other improvements? Do you happen to know that when this happened?
Liz, I sent you the approval for Harbor Committee a little while ago.
Thank you, Carrie. Let me pull it up.
And I will look and see if they had something.
Can you see if there's an active building permit or there was an active building permit when they were cited for building something illegally?
Well, I would assume that they probably didn't. Actually, let me not assume.
Could I have the size
Because
of
if you
that?
have a building permit in this village, you're required to update your system if you're doing a certain amount of work. So,
well, it depends what you're doing. Yeah.
Right.
Can I have the size of the as-built deck?
It's
You have
like
that size?
670, it's like 675 square feet, right? Is that correct? I believe so.
That's
correct.
675 square feet, correct.
That was 50% bigger than my first apartment in New York City.
congratulations.
It is a substantial deck without a
So-
permit.
It's
675 square foot of deck, remove a fence and water and gas lines, establish a 5,656 square foot revegetation buffer, and install 2 dry wells to contain runoff, provide a path to an existing dock, abandon the existing septic system, and install a new low nitrogen wastewater treatment system. So that is approved. I'm looking at the Harbor Committee decision right now.
Is that typical for them to approve the decision before we've acted?
I'm not sure as far as Harbor Committee is concerned, whether that's typical before you've acted.
I don't think it is.
I
but
don't keep track of them,
Yeah.
and I actually don't represent that board in particular. But there is an approval.
What do y'all want to do?
Well,
I mean,
it
I want to
seems
know if
me-
there's an active building permit at the time this was built.
There isn't. There
Okay.
wasn't.
at the time that this deck was built. So it was built without permission, without a permit.
No, it was built,
Right, but
and
you
they
still
knew they
have-
needed one because they
What
came.
year?
to us.
What year was it built? Do we know? I mean, is this in
I'm
the old
not-
days where nothing was ever permitted? or-
Guys, we need to reopen the hearing if we're going to take testimony. Can Liz?
It's not that old. It would have required a permit, whenever
It would
it
have
was built.
required a permit.
It would have required, it was not like 50 years ago or 30 years
No.
ago. This was built
Yeah.
10
It
years ago.
happened, it's my understanding that it happened after the ZBA was asked to review it and asked, it was withdrawn or denied. I guess it was withdrawn, and then they went to the Harbor Committee. So it was all within a time frame because Scott remembers it, and you're not that old.
No, I'm not. I haven't
All
looked on
of
the
the
board.
applications that were submitted to the building department were, the wetlands application was submitted in April of 2019. Then the wetlands ZBA were submitted to us again in July of 2019. So those are when we got the application. I don't know if that's when, if it was built prior to that or not.
And
But
when was it
regardless, I
cited?
just want to say, even though it's an as-built structure, the board is obliged to apply the 5-part test to the application before you. And there are other mechanisms from which this applicant was already, dealt with as far as the enforcement of the code and enforcing the requirement to get a building permit before you build something, and that's through justice court, which it did have a ticket, a citation, I believe, for that. And I think some municipalities, I have to check if we do, but some municipalities also double the fees for any as-built structures for building permits for them.
We just started doing that. We just started.
Oh, good. And they also double the fees for applications to ZBA, ARB, and Harbor Committee for as-built structures as well.
Well, that's right, Liz. What do you mean by that? By as-built structures? I mean,
Built without a permit, anything built without a permit.
so the penalties, the fines. you mean, not
Penalty is the
fees.
fine is double, correct.
Okay, fine, not the fee.
Can I ask if this creates a precedent for us?
I mean, everything creates a precedent. We'd have to distinguish this, as best we can in the record.
Is there any precedent for asking or directing an owner to remove an already built structure that was built illegally?
I'm sure there is. I don't
That
know.
has-
I'd have to check.
But that, I can tell you anecdotally, that has happened in the village where people have built things, submitted one set of plans and built to another set of plans, and then were required to remove what they built to go back to the approved set of plans. So
And to
that
do
has
that,
happened.
you just need to really apply the 5-part test to the application before you and make those findings to support that determination.
Well, this
I mean-
applicant didn't even submit plans. They got approved and did something different.
I mean, the plans that you have now in front of you.
Yeah.
I mean, originally, we were signaling denial of this because of its proximity to, the cove. I mean, it's only 10 feet from I guess it's not the beach, it's the bulkhead.
Right.
There are multiple decks on that property, and that property that comes down is exceedingly close to the water, 10 feet.
Well,
I mean, the only benefit to approving this is that, so let me ask you this, Liz, if we denied this, then they don't have to put in the IA system, correct?
Correct.
So the only,
Or the buffer.
Or the
or
buffer,
the buffer.
yeah.
So the only, the benefit is that they would be forced to put in an IA system, which is a very good thing on the water.
Right.
But we don't want to seem like we're rewarding them for doing something, but they've already been penalized for that, correct?
Correct.
But-
That's
but
my
the-
point. Right.
But the problem is that even I don't know what the fines are, but I'm guessing that they're not enough to dissuade most homeowners in this town where people are so wealthy that these kind of fines are kind of meaningless. It's pocket change. And so the worry is that people just, I'll just pay the fine. No, I'll pay double the fine. Who cares?
Liz, am I permitted
That's not what's before
That's
your
not in the
board.
purview
Your
of
board
this
is
board.
charged. Your
I
board
wanna-
is charged with the
I
5-part
want to have
test.
much more jurisdiction than we have.
I know.
so.
If you do, we'll get you a job at board member Madison, no
You all
problem.
want to
Well,
discuss,
I will-
I just have to be on all the boards. That's all. I'm just gonna.
Okay, that's you.
let's discuss the 5-part test. Whether the grant of their variance will cause an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood or create a detriment to nearby properties. Whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by another method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than an area variance. Whether requested area variance is substantial. Whether the grant of the variance will have an adverse impact on or effect on the physical and environmental conditions of the neighborhood district, and whether the alleged difficulty is self-created, which consideration shall be relevant to the determination of the board, but shall not necessarily preclude the grant of a variance. It's very difficult once something's built
to consider what you would have done if it hadn't been, which is what we have to consider, right, Liz?
Well, yeah, you have to see whether or not the benefit to the applicant outweighs any detriment to the community in this case by applying those 5 factors, right?
In other words, would we have approved it if they had come to us first? Is that a clear way to look at it?
That's one way to look at it, but I really think it's actually just whether you have to actually consider whether the benefit, just the facts of this case, whether the benefit to the applicant of having this deck there, which is already there, outweighs any detriment to the community by allowing it, right? As applying the 5-part test. A lot of boards require the applicant to submit financial information. How much would it cost you to demolish this deck? What would the impact be to you? And they weigh that, they use that as a factor to weigh in their decision making as well. So that the applicant says, well, it would be cost prohibitive for me because it would have cost this much money. Sometimes boards require that as well. Just so you can see. And in this case, you have to weigh that along with the benefits derived from the Harbor Committee approval, clearly.
And the Harbor Committee approval occurred after the citation was issued. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And can we consider the IA system a benefit to the community?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, everything that's in the Harbor Committee, the buffer and the IA system become.
It benefits the water.
So, I mean, if you do a trade-off, I would say it's better that there's an IA system on the property and a buffer than, and approving the deck because of that. I mean, if
you don't mind, I'd like to get some financial information. And then we've got all the factors.
Yeah.
Liz, can I speak at this point?
Chairwoman Mead, can you reopen the hearing? Can you reopen the hearing, make a motion to reopen the hearing?
Sure, I'll make it.
Because you're going to need that evidence in your hearing record.
Okay. Scott, you want to make a motion?
Oh, I'm sorry. I so move to reopen the hearing.
Do we have a second?
Second, Alex.
All in favor?
Aye.
So I don't have currently the precise financials in terms of what it would cost to demolish the deck, but I do know for certain that the cost of demolishing the deck is substantially less than the cost that we're looking at for imposing this buffer and the IA system. And I do want to state that if we imagine we're in a world where this deck is not yet built, we have the right as the applicant to go before the Harbor Committee before coming to the ZBA, in which case we would be before you presenting this with the same benefits that we got, benefits to the community that are imposed by the Harbor Committee. So we would be presenting this to you if we were to start fresh. If we were in control from day one, we would have gone to the Harbor Committee first, and we would be presenting these same variance requests.
You can go get an estimate for the board's record, though. You can get an estimate of how much it would cost to demolish the deck. Yeah.
I'm trying to distinguish this case from all other cases that might come before us, and I'd like an estimate of the cost of the installation of the IA system and the buffer. Then we've got a full picture of what we're supposed to be considering in terms of benefit.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I ask one more question? This is probably outside the scope of the ZBA, but just in case, is it unreasonable, Liz, to also ask the applicant to provide a basic narrative explanation, a written maybe affidavit, as to why he or she, I think it is, made the mistake of building a deck without a permit, just so we have a little bit of a clear understanding of the history of this, or is that not really when
that is not something, some boards do that. They try to get the applicant before the board to testify, but you have to remember, Board Member Matheson, that these getting an applicant to come before a board, sit down and testify, and they do this a lot with pro se applicants, what they did, the facts and circumstances that led to the creation of building a structure without a permit is really constitutes like testifying against yourself in a violation of your own Fifth Amendment constitutional rights, because you're testifying under oath to a board that you've committed a crime, right? So I think
That's a way of.
That's a
looking
good
at it.
idea.
Yeah.
I wasn't
Isn't
thinking
it
of a
true?
crime.
Think about it.
per se.
It really is true. And so when you ask an applicant or an attorney, you ask Ms. Wills to go back to her client and get an affidavit. I mean, that would be really bad if she did that.
And that's
But also,
that's a
this is-
citation process.
Yeah,
Alice.
there's another venue, there's another
another venue for that.
avenue to
Well,
deal with
maybe not an
enforcement.
affidavit. I
This
mean, just
board is
maybe just a-
not dealing with enforcement, but
Okay,
I
maybe-
understand why you feel that way, because you want
Well-
to dissuade people from violating the law.
Yeah, and even if it's not as heavy-handed as to make it an affidavit, but just
Right.
even a written explanation, just saying, so we can understand why this happened.
I fail to see how that is at all relevant to the 5-part test. And I
It's
also want
relevant.
to,
It's relevant to the background of the case. Absolutely. It's relevant. And every board asks about it. How did we get here?
Yeah.
It is
Can you-
relevant. But
can you explain what the purpose of the estimate is as it applies to the 5-part test? We're talking about the benefit.
We are trying to establish the benefit and the cost of removal.
Okay.
And our suspicion is that the benefit is greater than the cost of removal. We do not want another case like this. So I am personally trying to distinguish this. So if you will get us the information, we will hold the hearing open and adjourn it until April the 19th.
Okay, that clarifies. Thank you.
Do I have a motion to adjourn until April the 19th, leaving the public?
So
hearing
moved.
open?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, 53 Franklin. Is the applicant here?
Yes, Katie.
Evening board. My name is Katie Frank from Creeks and PC, representing the owner.
Are you an attorney?
I am not yet.
Could you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Would the board like me to share my screen while I go over the introduction and 5-part test of the application?
You can go ahead and share, Katie.
Thanks, Gary. Okay. Can you guys see my screen? The site plan?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is 53 Franklin. As you can see, there's a single-story dwelling currently on the premises, and the applicant is proposing to construct a single-story addition to the back of the house. Whether an undesirable change will be created in the neighborhood, we don't believe so. The addition will not be visible from the street. And the property here that's owned by Linda Lilienfeld, I do want to note for the board that she did submit correspondence to the board that is in support of this application. Whether the benefit sought could be achieved by some other method. So this lot is very undersized. It's only at 5,868 feet. And as we can all see, it's a very odd shape, very challenging to have a livable dwelling on this lot. So we believe that because the size and the shape of the lot, that it cannot be achieved by any other method. Whether the request is substantial. So we do acknowledge that this is a substantial request. I will go through the individual variances requests now. So the first one is applicant is seeking relief of 8.8 feet from the side yard setback of 6.2 feet where 15 feet is required. So that's noted right there, the 6.2 feet. Additionally, 3% of the lot coverage. So 23% where 20% is required. 0.5%, very small, of the building coverage. So 25.5% where 5% is required. And then additionally, we are seeking relief of 237 cubic feet from the pyramid. So most of them are pretty minor, but we do acknowledge that the 6.2 feet from the property line is substantial. We do pre-existing have a 5.8 building distance from the rear of the current structure to the boundary line. And I would also like to note that the neighbor, the frame garage here, I have a photo that can also better illustrate the proximity of this garage, but it's very close to the boundary line. So it's not out of character for this area to have structures close to the boundary line because the lots are very small. Whether there would be an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions. So this is a very modest proposal. The house as it is now, it's a little over 1,000 square feet. This proposed addition is only 296 square feet. So that still puts the house at under 1,300 square feet. And just to note, the board, the homeowner did preemptively upgrade the septic. So currently there's a low nitrogen system installed on the premises. The last part, whether the alleged difficulty was self-created, we don't believe so, again, because of the odd shaped lot and how it is a pre-existing non-conforming in its size. So we don't believe that this was self-created.
May I ask you a question?
Sure.
I showed 2 variances on the agenda. And is that correct?
No, actually,
Yeah.
Susan, I was going to say the same thing because the lot coverage and building coverage are not here listed.
No.
And also and this is a question for Liz, on the other side of the property opposite I don't know which direction we're going, but where it says 7.3, that needs a variance too, doesn't it? We don't grandfather, used to be we grandfathered the side yard, but we don't anymore.
Correct.
So there are a bunch of things that are missing from, and I don't know if it was advertised this way or not.
So we're missing the lot.
It was advertised that way, I believe.
Yeah,
So we have to re-notice.
Yeah, renotice.
We're missing the side yard. We're missing the lot coverage. What was the third thing?
The building coverage too.
Okay.
The total building coverage, yeah.
So
It's
we're missing
noted on
3
our
variances.
It's noted on our application, all of them.
Well,
Yeah.
then we have to renotice and we apologize.
Maybe it did. Let me check on this. No, I can't see it.
Liz, what are you looking for? The turn down?
Yeah, no, the notice.
Oh, I have it right here.
Does the board have a copy of the application?
I do. We all do.
Okay. Because
we're not saying that we don't have an interest in trying to approve or disapprove. We're
On the
trying to
public,
technically get
I will
what-
read what's on the public notice.
We're trying to technically get it done correctly.
Of course.
Just seeing what's on the public notice to the agenda. The public notice is the exact wording on the agenda.
So the public notice is in error and we have to renotice.
Correct.
Okay.
Katie, what is?
We're missing the lot coverage that Scott has picked up a side yard variance. It needs to be added. And we're
And
missing
lot
the building coverage.
Building and lot, yeah.
Yeah, all of which are on the application except for the 7.3.
Right.
I did meet with the building inspector regarding this prior to submission, and he did not raise that. But I'll discuss with Chris.
Sure.
I mean, he may not, that's how we've, he's fairly new, so that interpretation may not have come up before, but we've always, I don't know how many years now, Liz, right? That they don't grandfather side yards. Used to, but not in the village.
Right.
I mean, and if we just get into those numbers, I feel that they're both too small. I don't know if there's something you can do to adjust that. I know you're very limited here.
Yeah, I mean, the proposed back part, like already you can see, like he tried to take it in as much as possible. Again, this is a very
Yeah.
small house. It's 1,000 square feet. He's just trying to create like livable, realistically livable space. So even with this addition, it's about 1,300 square feet. He's not trying to go up. He's not trying to create a towering 2-story house on a
Yeah.
small lot. And a lot of these houses in this area, you can tell they're closer than what the code calls for to the boundary lines because of the size of the lot.
We're charged with trying to reduce the number of variances and the size of them. So that's why he's asking you these questions.
Yes, of course.
I guess we could try to distinguish it based on it. I mean, it is a very unusual, not just that it's small, but it's a triangle, which is a very unusual lot geometry.
Yes, I have, see, here's the house here. And here, you can see right here, like the boundary line and the, current structures here, they're all kind of, packed close to the boundary line. That's just kind of the character of this area of the neighborhood. And again, he's not proposing to go taller. He's sacrificing what very little backyard he has to just create some living space, for this house. It's very small. It's a very small lot. It's a very odd shaped lot. Each of the requests, so here's the plans here, just showing some additional living space added to the back and raising the roof line a little bit to keep that pitch. But, looking at each request individually, I know it sounds like a lot because it's 4, possibly 5, but each one, it's not a lot if you look at it individually. Like it's only 0.5% of the lot coverage. It's 3% of building coverage. It's under, for the pyramid relief, it's only 237 cubic feet. So each one is pretty minor except for the side yards, because again, you come to this triangle and trying to get any additional living space is going to be very challenging.
Really appreciate your comments. We are going to have to adjourn this and get it renoticed. We apologize.
No, I understand.
Do I have a motion to that effect?
I so move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The hearing is remaining open. Okay, we are now at 8 Jesse Halsey Lane. And I'm sitting here in the dark and I'm not really, so hang on a minute. That's not much better. We basically need to hear from Liz about a notice question that we discovered, and also from the applicant. So I'd like to hear a motion to open this case, please.
I so move.
Second, Alex.
In favor?
Aye.
Is the applicant here?
It's so bored. It is me again. I'm Katie from PC.
Well, you're not very good. You're not having good luck tonight because Liz, would you like to tell her the problem with the notice?
Sure.
Yes, I think she's aware that
Yeah.
this requires to be renoticed. She failed to notice an applicant. I mean, a neighbor, sorry.
Okay. Is there, before you make a presentation, may I just ask if there's anybody in the audience that wants to say anything so we know if you need to go all the way through this? Making your presentation and then. So there's no one here. Can I make a suggestion that we adjourn this?
Yeah.
And hear from the applicant and everybody else, if there is anybody else on the 19th.
Can I raise one question before we do that? On here, it says the proposed side yard setback for the garage is to be 12 12.2 feet. But I don't understand where the 12.2 feet is. Could someone explain that to me? The garage is almost 2.85 feet from the property line.
Sure, so we're seeking relief of 12.2 feet for a side yard of 2.8 feet. So, and just to note, that garage is already built.
No, I know that, but that's not what it says. It says the proposed side yard setback for the garage is to be 12.2 feet. It's 2.85 feet.
Sure, that's not how the application reads. So that the application.
But this is, I'm reading from the notice.
Yes.
We'll
Again,
fix that too. We'll fix
It's
that
a-
too.
I'm
Scott.
just
Thank
raising
you.
notice problem
Thank you.
because that's not worded correctly.
Right.
It has
We
it
don't want you to have
backward.
to come back again.
Yeah, it's backwards.
Okay.
Thank you, Scott.
Yep.
So can I present just to get feedback from the board quickly, or?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just going to quickly share my screen. Okay, so we are at 8 Jesse Halsey. So just to give you an idea, this is the pre-existing house and the garage that again is pre-existing on the property. Applicant is proposing to construct a 2-story addition on the existing structure and then also build out the back as 2 stories. So because the applicant will be extending the building towards the back of the property line, this existing side yard, backyard garage will become a side yard garage. And so that's why we're going to need a variance for the side yard for the garage. And then additionally, we need a very small variance for pyramid relief on the front dormers. I will quickly go through just the 5-point test. We do not believe that an undesirable change will be created in the neighborhood. I have photos of other properties in the neighborhood, but I know it's late, so we don't have to go through them. But dormers and 2-story frame buildings are common among the neighborhood. The size of the lot compared to the neighboring lots is much smaller. It's 7,153 square feet. So it's challenging to achieve these benefits by any other method. And whether the variance is substantial, we do not think it's substantial. Again, it's just this small area. It is under 50 cubic feet of variance requested for the pyramid. And again, that garage is pre-existing, so we're not proposing to build a garage that's, up 3 feet from the property line. Whether there'll be any adverse effect on the property, we do not believe there'll be any adverse effect. And if the difficulty was self-created, because the lot size and the placement of the existing structures, we don't think that it was self-created. So if the board has any comments, I know we have to adjourn until next month, but if there's any questions or comments, I would love to hear them now.
Liz, since we're into this thing about it, shouldn't there be a side yard variance to the proposed basement entrance? That's an accessory, isn't it? And it needs to be 15 feet from the property line?
Yes.
That's not noticed either.
Okay.
The steps here.
And there's no dimension on them. Yeah, in the village now, it used to be that things like that weren't considered needing setbacks, but now they have been for a number of years. And that needs to be 15 feet, correct, Liz?
Yeah, window wells, we've done basement stairs, we've done, yes.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's an
15
additional
feet,
variance
correct.
that needs to be added. I mean, other than those things, I'm okay with it.
I am too.
Okay, so we just need to add.
I am also, it's very challenging in the garage and there is non-conforming initially, so it's challenging, but I think they're making an effort to do what would be best.
I also think that the variance requests are pretty de minimis considering the small size of the property. So I'm pretty comfortable with it.
Do I have a motion to adjourn this to the
So
9th?
moved.
Second,
In favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And do we have any other business? Because I'm ready to make a motion to adjourn or ask for a motion. Good.
Not
we
that I
made it.
know of.
Anybody want to make a motion?
Oh, I'll
So
make a
moved.
motion.
second.
Bye.
Bye,
Thank you.
All in
everyone.
favor?
Good night.
Good
Aye.
night, good night. Thank
Night,
you.
everyone.
Before you get off, can you please just let me know that I can sign for you for the decision? If you can just send me an email?
Yes.
Sure.
Sure.
Just keep in mind, I'm not a part